Fresh off of a rumbling duel at the last great Coliseum, the next chapter in the regular season brings the field back to the shores of Daytona Beach in the calm before the storm. We're live from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. We welcome you to the 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series and race number 10 of Season 6. Welcome to coverage on the KBueno Racing Network, as always, where alongside Francisco Bacalhau in the booth, my name is Kenneth Bueno. Francisco, Bristol was a wild one. We've seen so much over the last couple of weeks in this season. Our second super speedway race finally happens, and we're back at Daytona Beach. It's been quite a while since we visited North Florida.
Yeah, I'm back to be in my home state, Kenneth, and what a contrast. We go for the Bristol Motor Speedway, and now we're going to one of the larger tracks in Daytona. And Daytona, much like Talladega super speedway racetrack, you're going to experience a lot of pack racing, but it's a lot narrower. So if you go 3 wide, it's going to feel a lot tighter than what it would at Talladega super speedway, but still the same thrill, the same action pack that we saw that race provide, we expect that here tonight.
We're going to see multiple super speedway races take forth in the schedule. Daytona will be later in this season in the playoffs. Our first visit here, though, in race number 10. We'll take a look in the rearview mirror first and see exactly what happened at Bristol Motor Speedway. And Francisco, that was a wild one. You and I got to cover that. TJ Bursk leading them to the starting green. And there's the 4 of Trevor Haley getting around to second before ultimately suffering issues late. Seemed to be the fate for many in that race.
Yeah, there was a lot of crazy impacts that happened during this race, especially off quarter exits. Several cars get loose, other cars trying to clear somebody and maybe not being clear, making some contact, and there you see Lance Hill around, Tony Kivet around as well.
And here's Scott Healy, one of those drivers, first to pit, Lucan up as well, but as they were trying to make their way through the field, they get stacked up by some old tire cars. They collect the loss and peel, and this is the biggest crash of the night by far. The 64 goes end over end. Here's another look at it. There with Cody Kinsey in the 2. Lance Hill also getting a piece of it, and the 64 will be sent out of this race. Then the leader, TJ Bursk, would come down pit road. He would try to work his way through the field, but Francisco, he did not get away scot-free.
He did not, and that was the theme. Most of the leaders, when they came down pit road, suffered trouble with traffic and all that sort of stuff, but eventually as the race wore on, we started seeing more green flag runs. You see a couple of moves being made by the KBueno Racing drivers. Jaden Porter and Ethan Fonseca started working their way up, Kenneth, and it took them a while, but eventually they did find their way to the front.
Over the first 105 laps of the race, it was all TJ Bursk, but then the lead would change hands. Here's the 34 Austin Reedy finding contact with Patrick Thompson, then Eric Stewart after getting sent around, and then here was the battle for the lead. Inside 18 laps to go, it became a 3-way fight between Ethan Fonseca Moreno, Lawson Peel, and Wyatt Brackett, but these two would go at it for the rest of the race. The 12 would try and catch up. There was a last-ditch effort in 3 and 4, but Ethan Fonseca Moreno came away with his second race win of season number 6. The 43 car remains on fire here in 2023. And Francisco, before we get into tonight's race, obviously no clear favorite when it comes down to Daytona, but if we're talking about just last week, and if you're only as good as your last race, we're looking at that number 43, Moreno, as a rookie driver, being able to capture his second win.
Yes, Ethan has had a very impressive rookie season to start off, Kenneth, and he's been right up there with those veterans of Lawson Peel and Eric Schaefer, who have ran away at the top of the point standings. But Ethan has kept close tabs. I mean, Lawson and Eric, they've had top 10s in all but one race so far this season, but both are not that far ahead of Ethan Fonseca. You look at the points there, and you see Ethan's just kind of keeping close enough tabs. He's pulling away from his teammate down in the 4th spot, Luke Canup, who did miss a race, and he's still doing a good job in the top 5 in the points. But then you see from Luke on downward, that's a lot tighter. You look at Brandon Banks in the 5th spot. Trevor Haley, a quiet P6, Kenneth, it must be said. Jeff No finds himself top 10 in the points. Ryan Pandicio up there in the playoff spot as well. But one you've got to keep your eye on here is going to be Jaden Porter, the last driver currently in. He's 6 points above Jesse Prees, and a big name and a big track that's really good to him. Kyle Benson, -9. He's looking to try and make some moves to try and get above that cut line here.
It's a solid fight for the top 14. Again, later in this season, those 14 drivers you see above that cut line will make the 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series playoffs. And you're right, Kyle Benson, the driver to watch for. Another would be AJ Green, who's sitting 9th in standings right now. He might put something to the field and be able to capture another win here at the World Center of Racing. But Lawson Peel, Eric Schaefer so far being able to pull away from everyone else, arguably the most consistent drivers of the season. Looks like some fog is covering Daytona International Speedway in the daylight. We'll head trackside and give you your starting grid for tonight's race here from Daytona Beach, Florida. On the pole will be the number 45 of Luke Knupp with a 50.585. He will bring the field to green alongside AJ Green on his outside in row number 1. TJ Bursk, who led the first 105 laps or so at Bristol, then got taken out in the middle of the race. He will start tonight from the 3rd place position, and rookie Ryan Pandiccio will start higher up here in the 4th position on the outside of row number 2. Jesse Priest starts tonight inside top 5 position. Austin Reedy in the 34, looking to rebound after the crash last week at Bristol. He rolls off from P6. Craig Parks with a great qualifying effort. Car number 17 will be position number 7. And Eric Schaefer, coming off of a 3rd place finish last week at the Last Great Coliseum, he rolls off from 8th place. Last time we were here, Colin Forrester grabbed the checkered flag. He'll look to do it once more. He is joined by CJ Munier, Francisco to round out the top 10.
And Dane Cruz once again makes a return for KBueno Racing. He'll start in the 11th spot alongside Season 2 champ Scott Healy in the 12th position. Lawson Peel trying to see if he can use some of Ryan Blaney's luck, your Cup champ, to see if he can get to victory lane tonight, starting in the 13th spot with league owner Tyler Murray starting in the 14th position. You look down at 15th, you have Brandon Banks, who's top 5 in points, and Curtis Kelly trying to make some noise in the 16th position. 17th goes to the 76th of Tony Kivet alongside Kyle Benson. We talked about trying to make some moves to get above the cut line. And Lance Hill down in the 19th position alongside him is Brady Cox.
21st goes to the 13 of Craig Lautenslager. He'll be joined alongside by Michael Newbraw in position number 22. Behind them in row number 12, it's the 91 of Adam Aleshire, joined alongside by Rodney Roberts in the 20 car in 24th. Row number 13 features Kevin D'Elia in the 53, Cody Ivey bringing in the rest of the top 26 in his 81 machine. Christopher Bishop is 27th, Brandon Gillis will be 28th, Stan Carnathan in the 24 is 29th, and Eric Stewart rounds out the top 30.
Ethan Fonseca will be starting from the 31st spot. No lap time being set. Jaden Porter, his teammate, will be alongside him in the 32nd position. Then you have Mikey Neal in the 33rd spot. Alongside him, another rookie in Patrick Thompson in the 34th position. Trevor Haley, another rookie as well, down in 35th, with Cody Kinsey starting in the 36th position. You have Jeff Noe in the number 14 car in the 37th position. Alongside of him, Timothy Cook starting in the 38th position. Brian Terra will be rolling off that's the 39th position, and then David Brackett will be alongside him, rounding out your 20th row and 40th.
So that'll be the entire 40-car field here from the high banks of Daytona International Speedway. It is a rather foggy afternoon here in Sim. You don't really see that often in Daytona Beach, but the track temp at 91 degrees. We'll see if that gets hotter or cooler over the course of the afternoon. Air temp at 70 east. Winds at 12 to 13 miles an hour. Very big factor there, so we'll keep an eye on how that might affect aerodynamics in the middle of the draft. So this Saturday, November 11th, marks Veterans Day in the United States, and as a tradition from the 4 Wide admins, they talked to us before we got this race underway. They wanted to bring all of the veterans and active duty service members up to the front of the field for a couple of pace laps. That's the 9 of Brandon Gillis you see on your screen. Alongside him, that is, I believe, Tony Kivet in the number 76. Both of them veterans or active duty service members, and we cannot say enough how thankful and grateful we are to those who have served and those who continue to serve to this day. They make the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms every single waking moment. So to those serving and to our 2 drivers tonight at the front of the field, Brandon Gillis and Tony Kivet, thank you so much for your service, and we'll give them the honor and time that they deserve up at the front of the field before we go green here at Daytona.
You couldn't have said it better myself, Kenneth. That is right on the mark. These guys, they serve our country and allow us to do exactly what we're doing here tonight and much more. So we appreciate them and everything they do, the sacrifices they have made in their lives so that everyone can have freedom and be able to do what they choose to. I have a couple of friends of mine as well that are active service. I want to give a shout out personally to Brett Baker. I want to give a shout out as well to Alejandro Raffles. He's currently serving over in Italy right now. He was in the Middle East earlier this summer, and as well as my friend JP, he's been active service. He's stayed in the States for the most part, but he did go over to Europe. I think it was last year as well. So I, I'm sure you know some people as well that you want to give a shout out to, Kenneth, that are also active service.
Of course, there are a lot of members of the active service or even former veterans. I know my uncle Ray, was an active service member at the time. You see Brian Terry in the 31. I believe he joined Gillis and Kivett a little late on the pace lap, but he still joins them regardless. So certainly thank Brian Terry for all of his service and his ultimate sacrifice, as we will get everybody back to the formal order on the starting grid, something that Tyler Murray and the 4 wide admins wanted to do, and that's why you see a lot of red, white, and blue schemes tonight. That's because we are just a couple of days away from Veterans Day in the United States, and we won't be celebrating it in the next race next week. So we're just going to have everybody commemorate this today, and we will have all of the drivers bearing the red, white, and blue, and the stripes and stars. Whatever scheme they may conjure up, Murray Reedy Motorsports has a lot of great designs and others along the field as well. I mean, you could see the sort of creativeness out of AJ Green with the red, white, and blue. I think those are Uno reverse cards that he has on his Toyota Supra. But we do have the lights off on the iRacing official pace car. Luke Knupp and AJ Green, the 2 Toyotas, will bring us to green next time by. Francisco, before we get to the start of tonight's race from the high banks of Daytona, anybody that you, or any certain factor you're keeping in mind as a driver for a key to success here in this super speedway race?
You have to survive, Kenneth. It's a really long race, and at any moment there could be a crash. So while you want to go out there, lead laps, and be a part of the lead draft, you have to be aware of your surroundings. If something not suit you, if you look at something and you're not sure about how safe you are, you have to bail and give yourself the opportunity. You have to make sure you're running at the end of the race to stand a chance at the win. You could be running 20th on the final lap and win the race. We've seen that happen in different leagues before. But that's the key to survival, because you could lead, you can sit out here and run top 5 all day, but if you get involved in a late incident, then that's all it takes to take you out of the win. We saw it at Talladega. We saw a big crash happen coming onto pit road and eliminated several contenders from that one, and that could very well happen here today. So I'm sure that's on the minds of everybody as before we take the green flag, is to try and make sure they play it safe and try to be there at the end. Kyle Benson and those Murray Reedy Motorsports cars are always ones to watch at the Super Speedway racetrack, Kenneth, but I don't know. I believe in superstition every once in a while. Ryan Blaney won the Cup championship this past Sunday, so Lawson Peel might be one to watch as well.
Car number 12, I like that pick, but I am going to say that I'm going to follow the trends of history, and so far, as we've looked at super speedway races here in Daytona Beach, Stonks Motorsports has the best record over the last couple of times we have visited the speedway, but Brandon Banks won the last super speedway race this season. So there's a lot to be said about the talent here in this field and what they can prove to the rest here in Florida. Luke Knupp and AJ Green bring up row number 1. Pace car is down into the restart zone, and to Barney the flagman, we are underway in race number 10 of season 6 from Daytona. And it took no time for the leaders to gather up on the inside lane. AJ Green able to steal the lead away from Luke Knupp, who drops back to 4th into turn 1, lap 2.
That outside lane was able to get a great launch on that start, and they all cleared your pole sitter, and now they're running in the first 3 positions, all led by AJ Green, a previous winner here from Daytona on a couple of occasions. So right now, you see most of the front of the field is going to go single file. You expect that early on in this race, but the outside lane trying to see if they can make something work, trying to see what can be formed up there.
Looks like they listened to you, Francisco, just before we dropped the green flag. Everybody's being a little careful in the jump of this race. Scott Ely trying to pioneer an outside lane, multiple rows deep. He seems to be hanging around at least the top 15, top 20. A bit of shuffling around there. How about the 94? TJ Bursk, he swings up high. He'll look for some momentum from 5th. Try to build up on the 45. He does. Here comes the 64 for assistance. That outside group starting to pick up pace here at the outside of turns 1 and 2.
And TJ Bursk is someone we've seen at Super Speedways when he works with the Murray Reedy Motorsports duos. He's been able to get up there and make noise. It looks like Pandiccio is going to move up to try and block the outside lane. He's going to get a push from the 94, and he's going to try and challenge for the top spot.
He'll go into turn 3. One car dropping back at the apron, but the 63 of Ryan Pandiccio with an opportunity at the race lead. AJ Green still holding strong with the 34 of Reedy right behind. But look at that distance all the way back to the 45 of Luke Knupp. Caution is out for the first time tonight. Looks like a multi-car incident. Stan Carnathan involved in it.
We'll see what exactly happened. It looks like it was probably towards the back end of the field. But we'll try and see if we can at least get a replay of what happened. There you see another car involved. Can't exactly make out who that is right there. As you see a better look at it there, I think
that's Rodney Roberts in the 20 who's involved. Indeed. A bit of left front damage. It looks like there are also other cars involved. Carnathan with some suspension damage. He is crab walking to the entrance of pit road. And we might have seen some others near the rear of the field. I did see Mikey Neal and Jaden Porter drop quite a bit, maybe in an effort to get away from the scenario. We'll try and dial up the replay and see what happens to bring out our first caution early at lap number 4. We'll see what happened near the back of the field, and this was a big skirmish. Francisco entering 3 and 4. I think this came part by the drivers who slowed up on the apron, and there was a problem in front. It looked like the 00 of Jesse Prees was the first one to get sideways, checked everybody up, and the 24 goes for a spin, and here comes Rodney Roberts.
Oh, what a shame there for Carnathan. It looked like he was going to be able to get away scot-free, but looks like Rodney just had nowhere to go and gets into him. And it looks like right there, just as Prees is trying to merge onto the track, there was not enough room, and that's what gets him sideways. And then cars taking avoiding action are the reason why you see everyone else get involved. But yeah, Kenneth, this is actually a very easy thing to happen if you're not aware of what's going on. There's going to be guys at the beginning of the race that will drop back, but you have to give them space before turn 3 to come up on the racetrack so that they can safely merge. And there you see Rodney's on the apron the entire time. It's just not going to work, Kenneth. It's just so flat down there. You have no grip, and there he just slams into the side of the 24.
And it looks like he is out of this race early. He took it down pit road, and he has not come out. So the 20 of Rodney Roberts out early. Stan Carnathan has taken his Ford Mustang onto the pit lane, and so have many others for at least some splashes of fuel. But for the 24, all repair on the Hemp's Mustang, and he's going to try to get it repaired as quickly as he can. But suspension damage does take a while to repair, and in the 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series for Season 6, there are no fast repairs awarded to you. So whatever damage you get on track, you have to come down to pit road to get it solved. And a lot of times, especially if it's suspension, that will take a very long time. So as of lap number 5, caution out early here from Daytona International Speedway, and AJ Green being able to take control of the race. And fun thing about AJ Green, Francisco, he was actually racing yesterday on Tuesday night for the eNASCAR College iRacing Series. The driver out of Clemens, North Carolina, was representing his college, Guilford Technical College, the sophomore there, studying engineering, and that's his major. So nice to see that AJ Green got a bit of iRacing TV time as the College iRacing Series took to Dover Motor Speedway for that race.
That is when drivers get to represent their college. There's the College Series, which I know you've covered before. I didn't really go to a traditional university or college, but I guess I could represent the George T. Baker Technical College for AMT courses. I guess that counts.
Do they have a mascot? Does Baker have a mascot?
I don't think so. I mean, if they do, it's an airplane.
Okay, well, I mean, if it was an airplane, that's probably the most mechanical mascot.
It's definitely the MD-80 outside.
Yeah, it's probably an MD-80 that's outside. I mean, Baker's right across from Miami International Airport, so maybe a bird, maybe just a plane. Who knows? I'm all Panthers. Hashtag pause up, although the sports program isn't the best. But nonetheless, we're going to double them up and get them ready for a green flag restart. The two Toyotas still at the head of the field. AJ Green, Ryan Pandicio will set up row number 1, and they'll set up shop at the restart zone next time by. Bring us back to action here from Daytona. But back to AJ Green. He is a former winner here at Daytona. It's taken him a little while to get back to victory lane here at the World Center of Racing. His teammate Colin Forrester has picked up the slack, though, so Stocks Motorsports has been able to win the last 3 races here at the World Center of Racing. It certainly tells you something, Francisco, that Green and Forrester know a thing or two about getting to the end of these super speedway races, but when you take in the factor that they were racing next-gen cars, very different race than what you have tonight with the Xfinity Series machines.
And I got to witness that firsthand as well, Kenneth, a couple of seasons ago. Unfortunately, that night you weren't able to broadcast, but I was a part of one of the races here at Daytona in the night. And Forrester and Green were very dominant in that race as well. I was able to be top 5 for most of that event. But those guys, those Stocks Motorsports guys, were very fast, and they were very protective of each other. And they were able to come away with the win. It was AJ holding off Colin for that 1-2 finish. I was able to get a 6th place finish, so I think I'll take that for a Daytona race.
Hey, surviving a super speedway is probably a win in its own right. So
yeah,
getting a top 6 finish is certainly good. There's a look at the 99 of Forrester. He's one of those who did come down pit road for a splash of fuel. The 99 did not get any damage. He was a little further up front when we started this race. Wants to take strategy as the priority here early in the going. So it's AJ Green in the 48, the 63 of Ryan Pandicio leading us back to action. TJ Bursk and Austin Reedy hosting row number 2. They'll be on the inside and outside, trying to give a push to each driver as we'll get ready for our first restart of the night. On lap number 6 of 100, the 48 will have discretion as we get back to green flag action. He'll take the gas pedal through the restart zone. We're back under green from Daytona, and a nice start from the 48 of Green opens the space for Ryan Pandicio to take place on the inside lane, and they'll lead him back to turn 1.
And also very quietly, Ethan Fonseca's in those first 3 laps before the caution flag made up half the spots from where he started. He started back in 31st, and he was up to the top 15. So that 43 car is trying to find his way to Dane Cruz to see if he can work his way up. But look at this run on the outside by that 34. He's going to go past the 63, and he's going to get alongside the 48. So Austin Reedy, one of those Murray Reedy Motorsports cars, already trying to make moves. He's going to have help from TJ Burst.
One of 2 Murray Reedy Motorsports cars that led the race last week at Bristol Motor Speedway. The other, the 10 of Wyatt Brackett. They had some space at the front of the field before things ultimately went sour for them. For the 34, it was a single car spin that got him into some contact. And for the 10, it was just old tires that he got beaten by raw pace on the racetrack. But the 34 now trying to nose ahead back to turn 1. The 94 with a nice push right behind, but they're going to stay even back to turns 1 and 2. You see the next Murray Reedy Motorsports car in line, that red, white, and blue Speedco Ford Mustang of Tyler Murray. It takes a little while for these drivers, Francisco, to find the teammates out on the racetrack, but for now, it looks like everybody's synchronized in the right way. A look on board with Murray.
Indeed, but they still are trying to be at least a little bit careful because they did have that early wreck, so they have to try and settle down a little bit. You see on the top left of the corner, we're about to start the 9th lap of this race, and there's 100 of these that you have to complete, so you're trying to be very patient because it's going to be a long one, but at the same time, if you think about certain drivers and their strategies, they don't want to sit around for 100 laps. They want to try and go out there and have some fun as well, so it's a tough balance.
They want to make sure that they can experience what it's like to be aggressive up front while also making sure that it's clean. But we go back to the 2 ideologies that you carry as a race car driver here at Daytona or Talladega or even Atlanta Motor Speedway, one of the newer super speedways added to the NASCAR calendar. Whether you want to be up front and stay up here, feel like if the chaos is going to happen, it's going to happen further behind you, or do you believe that at the front of the field, that's where the chaos arises, so you want to stay as far back as you can, save as much fuel as possible, and then attack the race a little later? We often talk about it every time we're at these larger tracks, but it always happens, Francisco. You always see 2 different groups of drivers that are either at the front the whole time, and that's where they want to be. They show their motive early, or they just hang back single file, and you can see on the opening laps of restarts, they're all single file at the back of the field, just waiting in the train.
Yeah, you can look at the back half of the field and you see a car about every half a second or so, and they're perfectly strung out in a way that they don't lose the draft, and at the same time they're not closely closely involved to the cars in front in order to give them some time. So here you see Brandon Banks running in the 20th pit spot. It feels like he's losing the draft, but look how many cars in front of him are single file, evenly spaced out. Brandon Banks right here is running in a safe position.
Brandon Banks, the driver out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, former winner at Talladega this season, and also bearing a Veterans Day car in the number 54 for Drinkin' Bros Racing. A lot of those DBR drivers are sporting the red, white, and blue, a lot of them with the Veterans Day colors. I mean, we did see Tony Kibbett, teammate of Brandon Banks, go up to the front of the field in solidarity for all the veterans and active duty service members. But the 54 currently running in 25th in this small group with Trevor Haley, CJ Munier, Brian Terry, and that's Craig Parks in the 17 right behind. And you're right, Francisco, they just want to hang back. It feels like a lot that they're losing out on, or they're missing out on for now, but looks like they are having that strategy in mind the whole way. It looks like Austin Reedy got shuffled out of line. He was outside 3 wide, remains that way. We'll see if his teammate Christopher Bishop gives him any slack. Answer is no, but they're going to stay double file, and the 34 will fall back in line. So that opens it up for TJ Burst to take control up top, and there's Scott Healy right behind him to give him the push.
You're going to try and see if he can give him a push to get even with the 48 going into turn 1, but you don't want to push in the corners. That can really upset the cars, especially these updated Xfinity cars, Kenneth. We've talked about it on a couple of races, but it really does free up the car on corner entry. It's a lot lighter. The back end feels like it could step out a lot easier. And at a track like this where you are trying to give a physical tap to the car in front of you, making an already unstable car more unstable is not a good move.
94 is going to remain stable up at the front. They're swerving quite a bit. And you can see this entire main pack just encapsulated by this shot. And it's multiple rows of cars, then by Christopher Bishop and Brandon Gillis. It really starts to break out, and that's around the 14th, 15th position. So around top 14 cars all clustered together. Everybody else just wanting to stay put where they're at, but we're seeing a lot of shuffling out of the top side, and we're starting to see more names enter the fray. Obviously, Bursk and Healy, those two, but Tyler Murray, the third car in line, car number 36. How about the 46, Dane Cruz, who came into this race, Francisco, having the highest average finish because he only started one race. That was at Pocono a couple of weeks back where he was able to capture a top 3 finish. But the rookie for KBueno Racing in his Yahoo Toyota Supra starting to put in some laps and up to the top 10 early.
I mean, if he can keep that highest average finish going after this race, I'd be awfully impressed, Kenneth, because it could easily alter after a race at Daytona. But he has been moving up solidly. He's now inside the top 10, and there you see a little bit further back is the 45 of Luke Canup, trying to see if he can get up there with his teammate, and Ethan Fonseca is not too far behind.
And the 43 of Moreno is lodged back in 20th, so the 45 is going to take a little longer to catch up to his BBR teammate in the 43, but the 46 is not too far ahead either, so he can catch up to that Yahoo machine, make something happen. We are still door-to-door for the lead, by the way, entering turn 3. AJ Green, TJ Burst continuing to go at it. And while we talk about last week's race at Bristol, the 43 of Ethan Fonseca Moreno is his second win of the season, bearing a new Spider paint scheme tonight on his Chevrolet Camaro. And it was interesting as well, Francisco, because over the first 9 races of the season, we have 3 drivers with at least 2 wins or more. We have not seen that pretty much at all in the entirety of the 4-wide racing history. It took 15 races last season to get 3 drivers with at least 2 wins. It's significantly shorter this time around, and all in part due to the stellarness of a driver like Ethan Fonseca Moreno in his rookie season, but definitely not afraid.
And the competitiveness of the series has gone up with each season, Kenneth. We see a lot more drivers being able to contend for wins and a lot more drivers being very consistent. And you end up in a situation like we have right now where you have big names outside of the playoff cut line trying to find their way in. And it's a legitimate problem instead of it being because of just poor finishes. They actually have to fight for it. That's what happens, Kenneth. You get a lot of competitive drivers in. There's only so many positions for somebody to be able to make up.
Only those 14 spots available to enter the 4-wide racing TJ's Team Series playoffs. And we mentioned the very slim margins around that 14th place position. TJ Burst, who's up in the front on the outside lane, he's tied with Jaden Porter in points going into tonight. A total of 222 for each of those drivers. And then Jesse Priest is not far behind. He's only -6 from them. Patrick Thompson is only 7 points out. We talked about Kyle Benson in the 38. He is only 9 points out. And then you get to even Timothy Cook further back in the top 20, he is only 30 points out. And when you think of a context of a long season, 30 points, it really isn't that much if you get a string of bad races as a driver further up in standing. So there's a lot of competitiveness throughout the field, a lot of competitiveness in that point standing situation. As you're seeing right now at the front, a lot of competition, a lot of great racing up at the front of this field at the moment. The 94 Bursk continues to hold on to the lead by just a tad bit over AJ Green. Seems to be the status quo here at Daytona, Francisco. Both side by side. As long as each line is organized, no problems.
Yeah, no problems until somebody makes a mistake and it takes out a couple of cars. But so far, that has not been the case. And there you see the 94 just holding steady on the outside of the 48, just kind of going back and forth on the straightaways. You see that outside move up and inch towards the front of the field, and then on the corners, the inside lane will go ahead as well. That's normal. That's going to happen here with the way the racetrack is. Shorter way around on the bottom. The momentum from the outside lane trying to carry it forward, but it looks like a car did get left out. Actually, no, that is a lap car. The 24 of Carnathan there. You see no rear bumper on his race car. It kind of shuffles up the outside lane just a little bit, only temporarily, but it should help them out eventually as they get back organized here as they go down the back straightaway. And Kenneth, this is not an easy test for the outside lane either, because you look at the inside and yeah, it's a little bit strung out, but they do have more cars attached to them than the outside lane does, and it does play a role as to which line starts to move.
We know what we say at these super speedways, Francisco. At least I say it often. Strength in numbers. If you have more drivers with you on either lane, you're going to go faster around the racetrack, bar none. If you have a series of less cars on either lane, they probably will have a harder time getting around a line that has maybe 10 or so cars if the other has maybe 4 or 5. Now, it isn't a huge discrepancy for those currently inside the top 15, but you are right, Francisco. Everybody hugged up against that double yellow line at the bottom of the racetrack. They have more patronage on the bottom than they do on the top, and that can easily shift lines. And as a driver, when you run up front, as we look at TJ Bursk taking over the race lead on the bottom, and now Scott Healy tries to press forward into turn 3, as a driver, how do you try and think about that? Like, how do you strategize your way either to the front or your way in each and every line, just based on how many cars are there and what that organization looks like?
A lot of it is in the moment. You're just kind of deciding based on what you see. If it's the time to go, if you feel like it's the right move to make in that moment, if maybe you feel that you should hang back. A lot of it is a chess game at 200 miles an hour. It's not an exaggeration when they say it in the broadcast booth on Sundays. It is truthful what they're saying. You really are deciding in that moment, a split-second decision. Do I do this? Do I do that? And sometimes you think about it for a couple of laps if you have the time to do so, especially if you're single file. You start thinking about, do I go for this? Do I not? And eventually, you have to make a decision, and you have to live with it.
These drivers are constantly thinking about that right now, and all of the things they're sort of strategizing in their minds, especially as this race has gone green. Remember, a lot of the drivers up at the front did not come down pit road, and with the fuel percentage on these Xfinity Series cars, we are expecting, if we stay green for at least the next 15 laps or so, drivers are going to make that decision. Look at Scott Healy trying to control both lanes entering turn 1. Stayed right in front of the 94, then saw the move by the 36 and said, no way, I'm shutting that door before he starts barging in. The 64 trying to do what we haven't seen so far tonight, control both lanes, but it'll work to his detriment. He's in the sucker hole. Tyler Murray to the race lead in turn 3.
I was going to say just that. I mean, he can do that all he wants, but at some point, someone's going to get to his outside, and he's going to get stuck in the middle, and eventually he does, but it looks like somebody's trying to give him some sort of draft there and move the line back down, and fortunately for Scott Healy, he's able to settle down third on the outside lane, as now TJ Bursk is going to try the same thing, and look, the exact same thing happens, and TJ had the opportunity, Kenneth. He saw what happened to Scott Healy, and he doesn't listen. He ends up in the sucker hole as well.
But at the same time, Francisco, Tyler Murray is having absolutely none of it. He does not want anybody to block his way to the front, and he's going to stay the car in clean air for as long as he wants to. A bit of looseness there out of turn 2 by Ryan Pandicio, but for the 36, he wants to lead the line. He doesn't want anybody in front of him, but now look at the line developing at the very top of the 31 degrees of banking. The two KBueno Racing Toyota Supras have found each other. Dane Cruz making it 3 wide for the race lead.
That middle lane only has 3 cars, so the outside is able to keep up a lot better than maybe the middle lane could right now, but You see all three lanes are rather evenly spaced, and they have a pretty good energy to it. And look, a couple cars behind, and there's Ethan Fonseca. So those BBR drivers have found their way to the front of the field on the 23rd lap of this race, Kenneth, and they're making this three wide work for now.
And again, we mentioned, Francisco, how narrow this track is in comparison to Talladega. When you run three wide like this, especially if you're those cars up at the very top, you run that risk of running right up against that outside safer barrier. And as we watch on board with Dane Cruz here, he knows he's ahead for the race lead, but hear how close he is to the outside wall, trying to fend with the 36 and the 94 down low. You can get ridiculously close in the draft. And when you have one little mistake like that with how narrow this surface is, you might get some contact. So it's sort of a risk versus reward you have when you run up there.
I would actually say it's a lot harder to run the middle than it is either of the extremes, Kenneth, and that's because you only have cars as a reference. At least on the inside, you have a fixed reference with the yellow line. On the outside, you have a fixed reference with the wall. When you're in the middle, you have to rely on two cars that are most likely moving side to side.
Now there are only two cars in the middle lane, the 94 of TJ Burst, the 91 of Adam Alashire. So they are both stuck in what we call the sucker hole, but they're not getting sucked back. In fact, they're staying ahead with the drivers up at the front. We remain three wide for the race lead at lap 24, and it is all the 94 of Burst just trying to hold on as the numbers build up in surrounding areas. And it looks like the 36 of Murray will have control of the lead as they get back to the stripe. It appears Dane Cruz might have gotten left for dry because Luke Canup wanted to tuck back in the draft. Car 46 was in trouble for a moment. Now they regain control, and we're back to two lines as it appears Francisco Bursk and Alashire escaped without harm.
Yeah, that was a bit of a no harm, no foul for the 94 who tried to make the block and ended up working out for him. And in fact, he might just end up going back to the lead here with help from that 46 and from the other cars behind him as well, because there you see AJ Green on the bottom and the 36 Tyler Murray. They're now side by side for the top position and contact.
Well, the 91 gets sent up the racetrack. Now he's going to propel backwards as the 46 of Dane Cruz will take control. Now caution will come out. Everybody slows down. Looks like there might have been trouble further back in the field, but for most of them, they seem to be okay. And how about, looks like a 2 to 3 car incident. Eric Stewart being one of them, Cody Kinsey the second.
We'll see exactly what happened here. And that's the second time we've seen an incident in 3 and 4 early on in this one here on lap 26, Kenneth. So it's been a quick one already. We're already a quarter of the distance through. Is only the second incident, and it once again happened at the back end of the field, at the very back of the field for the matter. These were the last two of the last cars in line on the racetrack, and it looks like potentially the 82 gets loose into the corner, and Cody Kinsey has nowhere to go.
We'll take another look at it here entering turn 3. So Eric Stewart and Cody Kinsey, like I said, we're at the very back of this field. This is all single file. Drivers just saving where they're at. And about here is where the 82 swings out of line and then comes back down until he loses control of his Camaro in enough time to get right in front of Cody Kinsey and basically swipe the front nose off of it. And so it's only a 2-car crash here, but we'll take another look at it here from Stewart.
Yeah, it was a bit of an odd one. Not sure exactly what led to the car going to the outside like that. And obviously lost control trying to get it back to the bottom, so a bit of a head scratcher there.
Here's a better look from the in-car cam of Eric Stewart right behind Brandon Gillis. And you also heard there on the rear view camera that he let off the gas pedal. Right there is where the revs sort of flutter a little bit, Francisco. A very odd scenario. And Stewart was off the gas pedal. Then the car regained control before it snapped out loose. And then Cody Kinsey had absolutely nowhere to go in the path.
Unfortunately, not too much damage on either of those two race cars, so they should be able to keep going. As I believe we do have pit stops. Indeed, yes, all the field is in, as this is a huge opportunity so that they don't have to pit under the green flag. So many cars on a pit road. Different strategies, Kenneth, with certain guys potentially taking 4 tires, maybe some guys taking 2 tires, and that's going to shuffle up the field as Dane Cruz will exit first off of pit road, so he'll be your race leader.
An 11.3 second stop for the 46 of Dane Cruz as everybody else floats around the 14-15 second bracket. It appears 4 tires and fuel for a bulk of the field, but for Dane Cruz, might have just been 2 tires and a splash on the way to the pit road exit. So the 46 will take control of the lead for the first time since the 3-wide action built up at the very front of the field. TJ Burst, Tyler Murray, Kyle Benson, and AJ Green will bring up the rest of the top 5. And so, Francisco, over the first 2 cautions and first proper stint of the race, was there anything you noticed in particular that might play a factor for the rest of the evening, or was this drivers testing the waters for now and seeing where they end up?
They certainly were testing the waters. They're trying to experiment to see what they can get away with, how the car is going to react in certain instances. Because at the end of the race, we're going to see something like that again, because that's going to be when the win is on the line. But I also know that at the end of this race, it's going to be a lot darker than it is right now out there on the racetrack. A lot cooler of a track we're going to have by the time lap 100 comes around. So whilst the track temp may be in the upper 80s right now, Kenneth, it's certainly going to drop a lot more, and that's going to play a factor. These drivers, it's such a mental challenge when you're in there in the race car, but when you have that visual reference of the sun going down and the race getting towards the end, it really just kicks it into gear.
And how about the wind as well? We mentioned how strong it was at the start of this race. It stays where it's at. It's about 12, 13 miles an hour to the east. So it's a really odd weather day here in Daytona. You really don't see the fog come up. I think the wind really isn't a surprise based on how windy it's been here in South Florida for comparison over the last couple of weeks. But you're right, track temperature and weather really going to matter, and that's going to be the big dynamic. Oftentimes we see track temperatures fluctuate here and there, and while they do affect the racing, the swings aren't as bipolar in that sense. It feels like tonight the swing in temperature, the swing in wind, and direction certainly is going to be a big factor in this race. And so far, it really hasn't posed as a problem, but we'd never know what could happen. And as the clouds sort of linger over the Daytona sky, can't really see all that far, which is a problem for us in the broadcast booth and for the broadcast itself, but we can still see pretty clearly for the cars that we're close to, so at least that's good news. TJ Bursk and Dane Cruz on row number 1 here for this green flag restart. As we talked about, the Murray Reedy Motorsports teammates in Benson and Murray will bring up row number 2. And just before we go green, Francisco, we talk about Tyler Murray often as a driver who performs well with these super speedways, given the team that he's on and their record at these larger tracks. Murray, though, has been sort of on that don't give an F tour where he's still looking for his win in a very long time, and a super speedway win at that. He feels like he has the best chance at winning these races at these larger tracks. Remember that Talladega race a couple of seasons ago where it felt like he was oh so close to it, and then it got ripped away in the last seconds. Tyler's trying to rewrite the script here tonight from Daytona.
Maybe he got a preview of the script and he likes what he sees because he's already running well here tonight. But yeah, that was the last Talladega race at the end of last season, Kenneth, when Tyler Murray was really close to that race win. He won here back all the way in season 2, I believe, as well. So it's been a really long time for Tyler Murray to find victory lane, and he's on his don't give an F tour, and rightfully so, because he's been hungrier than ever to try and capture a win. Is today his day? We'll just have to find out as the green flag is back in the air. Dane Cruz gets a pretty decent launch from the 94 of TJ Bursk as the field sets off for turn 1.
And a big push here from the 36 to the 46. A lot of space between Kyle Benson in the 38 on the outside and the former race leader before they got to turn 1, TJ Bursk. It looks like now they'll crunch up on that second lane. They seem to way more organized on the bottom out of turn 2. Dane Cruz will have control, but before, here comes TJ Bursk rather than the 94, excuse me, now on the outside, and the 38 giving him the push, a bit of shuffling around the mid-pack, back to turn 3.
And you see just that when they get enough cars, and once they get wound up, that outside is just powering by on the outside lane, just able to carry the momentum all the way down the straightaways. It's the corners where they lose out just because of the distance, but watch, right here, that 94 just has the advantage, is able to get ahead of the 46 towards the start-finish line. He's clear right there. He can move down if he wants to, but he doesn't want to because he has his help right behind him. There you see, he's able to move down, but only for a brief second. Not anymore. He's going to stay with the 38.
Well, we saw the experimentation go wrong for Bursk when he cleared to the inside lane after taking control of the lead from the second lane. As soon as that happened, the car on the outside took the opportunity and didn't throw away their shot. They were on the outside, and they challenged as much as they could. So the fear for the 94 here is if he clears down low, what does that 38 do? He's going to take up that spot. He'll run for the race lead. And the last thing also that you want to happen are the two Murray Reedy Motorsports Ford Mustangs getting closer together, because if they start to work in a cohesive manner, those are really the only two teammates up here in this first group that are collected enough together to work in the best way possible. The only other close teammates that I can see in proximity are Stonks Motorsports' 48 of AJ Green and the one machine of Lance Hill, starting to bring in 8th and 9th on the racetrack. And onboard look with AJ Green.
And you see how intense it is being on the inside with multiple rows of cars on your outside. You have nowhere to go. You also don't know that you can't just run into the back of the car in front of you, because for all you know, he's pushing the car in front and you don't want to push the pusher. That never goes well. As I just noticed this, Kenneth, that's Perry the Platypus on the front of his car.
And that's Doodle Bob giving him a lift. So it's a really weird combo. Two different franchises, two different networks. I don't know where the combination came together. There has to be some lore. I don't know where it came from, but if we do get to talk to AJ Green after this race, then I guess we'll give him that interrogation. That we won't even ask him about the actual race. We'll just ask him about his paint scheme. He does have a lot of Uno reverse cards too, in red, white, and blue. So I don't know if there's lore there either, but you know, whenever you get AJ Green on track, you're gonna have a wacky paint scheme, and there's always a guarantee of that.
Yes, but I said Perry the Platypus, but for all I know, I think that's a regular platypus. I don't know. What do you think?
It just looks like a normal platypus to me. If you see a certain brown and black fedora, then it gets a little suspicious. But for right now, it's Doodle Bob carrying a normal platypus as AJ Green remains 4th on the inside lane. Kyle Benson gets shuffled out. He gets put 3 wide. Now shuffles behind Colin Forrester, and then comes in Luke Canup, and that was a move by design. Francisco, the 45, made his move underneath Benson, pushed him out of line, and said, this is a lot of open space. If you're going to give it to me, I'm going to take it.
And Luke Canup was one of those contenders that was taken out in that late green flag cycle crash at the Talladega Super Speedway. It took him a while to get to the front in that one, but once he did, he was one of the fastest drivers out there, had a shot at the win, and there you see right now, found his way up into the top 5, trying to push TJ Burst even with his current teammate. TJ is actually going to bail out, so now Luke Canup is going to lead the outside lane.
94 is going to check up and let everybody through. He'll try to find some space on that outside lane, and it's up to the Peoria, Arizona native of Canup to take control up top, but not before the 36 has something to say about it. Tyler Murray to the stripe, to the lead.
And now the 43 of Ethan Fonseca Moreno is just a handful of cars behind Luke Canup, so those BBR guys are trying to see if they can take control of this race, because you have one on the inside, 2 on the outside, but they're just separated right now.
Luke Canup came away with a 6th place finish last week at the last Grand Coliseum after starting in 11th. It was a little bit of a rocky race for him, especially starting near the rear of the field. But for Canup, who already has a race win here in Season 6, looking for his second and just trying to catch up to his teammate Ethan Fonseca Moreno as he makes contact with Tyler Murray at the front of the field, and it jumbles everybody in the first pack.
And you see drivers for a second wondered where to go because they didn't know if there was going to be a crash or not. It ends up working itself out, but not before the outside lane gets dissolved. And you see how quickly the drivers were to try and prevent that from happening. And you see it nearly happen again as Canup thought about going to the bottom. But look at this, a move to the outside. That's 91 of Alashar going by the 36 of Tyler Murray with help. I believe that is from AJ Green and Lance Hill. So those Stonks Motorsports guys have found each other thanks to that, and they've been able to make their move.
Adam Alashar presses forward, and a bit of a wiggle there on the inside for Dane Cruz, getting a huge shove from the 36 of Tyler Murray. Now the question is, does anybody dump down low? The answer will be yes, and it will be all 4 of the race leaders. Make it a Toyota brigade up front. Your top 6 or so occupied by the Supras at the helm of the field. The 45 trying to build something up top, but they have really disorganized there, Francisco. It was that little contact between the 45 and the 36 that set everything into motion. Now they have to work hard in the next couple of laps to get that outside line rolling again.
There's a lot of Supras up in the front of the field, and that makes me very happy right now.
Well, they're going places for sure. These Toyotas are making a statement tonight in the Super Speedway, and now here comes Luke Canup. Charge on the outside, on the back straightaway to turn 3. Big push by the 64 of Scott Healy, makes himself the first Chevrolet inside the top 5 after a couple of laps. Bring in the 43. Ethan Fonseca Moreno not too far behind either. And how about Colin Forrester in the number 99 out of Jacksonville, Florida, Francisco? He was all the way further back in this field beneath the top 25 tonight. What did I say earlier in this race? He knows a thing or two about moving his way through the pack at a super speedway. Forrester inside the top 10 for the first time in a while.
And Forrester needs a win. He needs to try and get himself up there in the points to help out for those missed races earlier in the season. Kenneth, he's a former winner in this series, a former championship contender trying to return to that status. And it could all kick off with a win as there you see a car get shuffled to the outside. That's going to be the 45. Luke Canup gets moved out to the outside lane. He gets shuffled out. So now put Scott Healy leading the outside lane. But going back to Colin Forster, Kenneth, the Duval County native, trying to see if he can get a home win. This racetrack's only about an hour or so away from where he lives, Kenneth. So if he's able to get a win here, and he's done so before, it is a hometown win technically.
He's won the last 2 Daytona races in the 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series. In Season 5, he won the opener here at Daytona. Then when we came back to close off the regular season, he came back to victory lane and did it all over again. This 99 car is looking for a 3rd consecutive W here in Daytona Beach, but that 99 just sort of meanders around 3rd in that outside lane as Scott Healy tries to move forward to the race lead. Adam Alshire playing a bit of defense and having a bit of scrambling further back in the top 15. While we talked about, Francisco, the big difference in space between the first 14 drivers in our opening run and everybody else, it feels like less separation this time around. And while they're not exactly nose to tail by any means necessary, they are still hanging around here, and they're not taking themselves out of the conversation just yet.
And that's what it's all about. You see how they're very strung out. They're able to keep the draft off of one another. That way they don't lose too much time. So whilst, yes, they're not exactly nose to tail like you see at the front half of the field, if you're just a couple of tenths behind the car in front of you, you have enough draft to be able to run part throttle and not lose the draft. So that's very ideal. You save a lot of fuel doing so, and you could stay out of trouble.
Here's the driver of the 12, Lawson Peel, currently running in 25th place. This is a special National Guard paint scheme that he's running for tonight's Veterans Day Salute race in this series. And so, sort of throwback there to Dale Earnhardt Jr., typical 2014 Daytona 500, wink wink, trying to sort of capture that essence of a Dale Jr. win at this very speedway. And so the National Guard colors here for the 12 of Lawson Peel as he fights Timothy Cook for position number 23. Not often do you see these colors and this sponsor from Lawson Peel. We're usually accustomed to seeing the X-sponsored race car week in and week out in Season 6, but nice different change of scenery here for Lawson Peel. Beautiful paint scheme, beautiful throwback to Dale Earnhardt Jr., and he's definitely making his motive early known for the field. He wants to stay back, hang around the top 25.
If I were Lawson, I'd bring back the Chick-fil-A paint scheme. That was a good paint scheme. We need that one back.
It was a yummy paint scheme for sure. It did bring him a couple wins in the series, so maybe you can attribute that as well. Here's the 43 of Ethan Fonseca Moreno, now challenging for the lead. We talked about Francisco moving down to the bottom, how that could hurt you if the driver right behind has a big run in the next lap or so. Now the rookie Moreno tries to take over control.
What makes moving down to the bottom a tough choice, Kenneth, is that one, it's the protective line to go. You go there and you know you're safe down there. But let's say you get out far ahead and the car behind you gets clear of the inside. They're going to move down, and now you have an even bigger gap to the car behind you, and it just stalls the outside lane a lot more. So it just makes it a tough decision. But if you're able to get a couple cars to stay on the outside lane, especially compared to the inside, then it should be should give you a fairer chance of being able to make that work. But it's just so even, the amount of cars in each line, that inside lane in the corners has such an advantage that they're able to hold steady. But you see the 43 on these straightaways able to pull in front and try and clear the inside lane. He doesn't get fully clear, but it just keeps him out in front.
As long as it keeps you in contention with that driver on the inside, that's probably what really matters. You really don't want to have the lead by a large margin here at Daytona. And now here comes up the 64. But once more, he's going to get put in the sucker hole with absolutely no help. When you try to block these lanes, that's exactly what happens if a driver right behind doesn't want to play fair with you. So the 64 trying to survive in the trench of the mid-pack.
And I don't think he wanted to make that move, Kenneth. It didn't look like it was a planned move. Maybe he got loose or hit the apron off of turn 2. Slid up the racetrack, and the 91 just said, I'm going to take this gap, and he's now going to lead this race.
So the 91 out in front, the Black Rifle Coffee Toyota Supra will take control of this race. For Team Skybox, AJ Green, the Stonks Motorsports Toyota right behind him. In the initial inside line, Kevin DeLeo for Skybox making his way to the top 4. There's a lap car right in front of the leaders. That is Cody Ivey in the 81, but he'll duck out underneath the double yellow line, and he'll give way for the entire field. They're starting to get a little closer, Francisco, over lap 43, and while they did come down pit road approximately 16 laps ago, so the fact that they won't really have to worry about pit road strategy for now, we're getting later in this race. We're getting to the halfway mark, so comfort is starting to grow, which means the aggressiveness will probably get up there too.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. It's definitely going to start picking up as the race goes on. With every passing lap, you start getting more aggressive. You start pushing the envelope just that little bit more until something happens. And until that occurs, you're just going to keep doing so. And you're going to see that out of different drivers, especially further back in the pack, where you have to get more aggressive to get towards the front of the field. Right now, still on lap 44 of this event. We're probably about 15 laps away from another green flag pit stop, Kenneth. But what's important to note is that if that does happen, that won't be the last pit stop in this race. They won't have enough fuel to go all the way on just for one stop.
That will make things rather interesting. We are 6 laps away from the official halfway mark of tonight's race from Daytona International Speedway. Moreno moves down to the inside, so will give the chance for Colin Forrester to lead a couple of laps tonight. And so car number 99 works from pretty far back in the field after coming down pit road in the bulk of the field, down to the front. And the chance to lead. Scott Healy, who got put in the sucker hole just a couple of laps prior, he has been able to keep himself inside the top 5. So he has worked his way to the outside of the second lane. And so the top 15 or so cars remain in this nose-to-tail group. 45 laps down, Francisco, and we've seen a lot of great racing so far. We're also seeing new names enter the foray. Here's the 42, Christopher Bishop, with a Boot Barn Patriotic paint scheme, red, white, and blue on his Ford Mustang, part of the beautiful assortment of Murray Reedy Motorsports Veterans Day paint schemes this evening.
It's giving America, isn't it?
Yeah, that is pure America right there.
Yeah, a lot of great patriotic paint schemes out here. We saw a good amount of them in the pre-race during those pace laps, but you get a good look at them on board while they're out there racing, kind of thing. You just get a nice view of what they look like, and you see them from different angles. You see another one right there in the 34 of Austin Reedy. That's a good, solid one right there as well. You see out here that you see David Brackett. Just in front of him is the 38, Kyle Benson, with teammate Tyler Murray to the inside. Both of those guys running pace schemes. So look at the Murray Reedy Motorsports trio right there, for that matter. Luke Knupp in his patriotic that got a win back at Nashville. He's hoping to try and give that car a second win.
And I'm starting to notice more Murray Reedy Motorsports cars enter the mix. So we're seeing Austin Reedy, Kyle Benson. We're looking at Tyler Murray in that as well. Christopher Bishop in the 42. So we mentioned teamwork at these super speedways. Now they're starting to find each other on track. That can get really dangerous for those who are a little bit out of sync with their other teammates. Now, KBueno Racing does have this duo right here, the 45 and the 46. But then you get a little assortment of drivers all over the place. You have DBR guys that are not necessarily all clustered together. They're a little bit separated tonight. You have, of course, Team Skybox, which have been trying to cluster together for most of the race, but haven't found each other's footing. Stonks Motorsports, they've also been all over the block and now make it 3 wide for a position inside the top 10. Kyle Benson and Austin Reedy, we mentioned those Murray Reedy Motorsports teammates. They're hooked up together at the top of the racetrack.
Forrester had cleared for the lead back in turn 3, but Moreno, Alpha turn 4, jumped to the outside. He's going to take the lead right back with help from the 64 of Scott Healy.
And they're 3 wide further back. Now here comes the Pilot Flying J Ford Mustang making a charge at the exit of turn 2 as Forrester holds on in the lead. We'll see what sort of method he takes as they get a big run. Now Scott Healy will join them, and once more we're 3 wide for the lead on the backstretch. Healy dives downstairs, and Benson will have a chance at the lead now.
Benson's going to go to the outside now, and this is going to be 3 by 3 by 3. Dane Cruz will follow that field up on the outside lane. So you can see it's getting very aggressive here as we approach the halfway lap.
Benson, the driver out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania, certainly looks forward to these super speedway races. One of the best when it comes down to working with his teammates. Him and Austin Reedy, Francisco, over the last couple of seasons, we've seen them as a dual threat at these larger tracks, be it a next-gen car, and now with the Xfinity Series machines, they have not let up on the pressure, but they are losing numbers. Now make it 3 cars in the middle. Dane Cruz will give the push to Scott Healy, but all in an attempt to get around Colin Forrester to almost no avail, but now they're locked even again.
You see, it's just it's just tough to go up against that inside lane, Kenneth, the shortest way around the racetrack, and also has the most cars. So you're just constantly having to fight and work harder when you go to a different line like that. And it's not impossible. You see they're able to hold steady. If you just had a bit more race car in it, you could make it work.
We look on board with Adam Alashire, who gives the push to Colin Forrester, who faced a very interesting fate. Last time we were at a super speedway, Francisco, it was Talladega. And what happened at Talladega with car number 99? He was behind the race leader until his engine exploded. We talk about getting fresh air on your radiator. For these leaders, it's not a problem, but for everyone else, that is something they have to keep in mind, Francisco. As a driver, how do you try and balance that? You try to make sure that your engine doesn't explode right in front of your face as Kyle Benson takes the race lead. You have to make sure that you get at least some sort of air on the nose before the temperatures start to rise.
Well, certainly no matter what, you don't want it exploding. It's never a good thing to have something or anything explode in your face. But also, even with the fact that we have no fast repairs now, even in the past, when you had fast repairs, you don't want it blowing up in the middle of the pack because you have to get it back around to pit road once again. But this time, if that happens, you are done, D-O-N-E, done for the race, and you're not able to continue. So you obviously want to try and make sure it stays under you. And of course, these drivers do have that gauge in the race car. It sometimes will flash red if you've been aggressively pushing, and you want to try and keep it balanced between when it's sitting at that blue bulb and when it occasionally will flash red. You got to try and find that balance. And sometimes you want to cool it down a little bit more than what you normally would want to, so you can go for an extra push or two for a couple of consecutive laps to try and make something work.
And that's why you'll see a lot of guys either on the inside or outside lane sort of swerve out of the preferred lane where all the cars are stacked single file. If you see a car swing up high for at least a couple of seconds, it's because they're trying to grab some of that clean air that they won't have if they're stuck on the back bumper of the driver in front. So if you do see a bit of swerving, that's why. It's that sort of balance of keeping that car collected temperature-wise as Adam Alashire gets loose. A huge save in turn 2.
Fantastic save off of turn 2 by the driver of the 91, Kenneth, to keep it straight with all that traffic behind him. Let's get a look at this. This is shades of Kyle Busch from many years ago from that one shootout.
And just a slow-mo look there at the 91, getting a look at how exactly he grabbed that double yellow line. It gets dangerous when you're going about 190 miles an hour. There's the correction. Adam Alashire with a huge save in front of the field and keeps this one green.
And it didn't take much. You can tell it did not take almost anything. Just the front of the car, just that front left clip of the splitter clips the apron, the flatter part, and it was just ready to bring that car around. So fantastic heads-up move by the 91 to keep it straight and keep it under the green flag.
And he stays inside the top 10, so a bit of a win-win there. He keeps his car straight, he avoids any damage, and he stays basically where he was, albeit losing a couple of spots. Now the Stocks Motorsports Toyotas have found each other. Look at the big wiggle by Lance Hill. Looks like he'll get shuffled out of line. They're stacking up. Dane Cruz got loose on the apron, much like Alashire did. He's going to keep the car straight. David Brackett also finds the same looseness out of turn 4. And look how much, Francisco, this broke up the field to cross the line for lap 54.
They're very strung out. It'll take a couple laps before they get brought together, and that's exactly what happened to the 91 a couple laps ago. But you remember, Dane Cruz did take 2 tires on those last pit stops, so his car is certainly a lot harder to drive right now than it was earlier in this run.
They're getting absolutely squirrely, and they are prepping for a potential green flag stop scenario. You're seeing everybody move down to the double yellow line. Colin Forrester and Lance Hill remain up top. And as they come out of turn 4, we might have to keep an eye on who starts to hit the brakes to head for pit lane for service. Right now, nobody takes it, but in the next couple of laps, Francisco, this will be the setup for the entrance to get some service tonight.
Absolutely, and if that's the case, if you're Forrester and that one of Lance Hill, you might want to think about getting to the bottom. Sure, it's going to be harder to pass the 64 and get yourself up in front of them so you can go down pit road, because look at the long line of cars behind them. But at some point, you're going to have to do so. Pitting from the second lane is never the greatest move, because sometimes not every car on the inside is going to come down pit road.
So here's a look at Lance Hill. Him and Colin continuing to stay up top, and Hill trying to recover from what was a 39th place finish last week at Bristol. While we were touching on the highlights at the jump of the show, Hill got into a spin and then hit a spinning Tony Kivet at the bottom of the racetrack on one of the straightaways, got suspension damage, and that was it. So for the driver of the 1, certainly trying to rebound and get some well-needed points out of a super speedway race where you can get a lot of points taken away from you, and it appears the KBueno Racing duo of Canup and Moreno were having none of the leaders up front. They break up the train, and now they take control of first and second.
And this is how it was at Talladega just before the green flag pit stops that unfortunately took them out of winning contention in that one. So they're hoping for better execution all across the boards to try and stand a chance here in the second half of this one.
So it's Canup, Moreno, Healy, Murray, and Benson, your current top 5. As they curve out of turn 4, they were all conglomerating around the top 15 for a bulk of this race. They're starting to thin out quite a bit as they move single file. There are 2 drivers at the top of the racetrack forcing their way into the top 10. One of them is Lawson Peel in the 12. We haven't talked about his name for much of tonight. Him and Jesse Prees, the same. The 2 Drinkin' Bros Racing Chevrolets are taking advantage of everybody camping down low. They want a bit of that momentum and a bit of the track position.
Yeah, if everyone's still on the bottom, there's going to be a lot of stack-ups. If you could just move up top, you don't have to break as much, and it gives you an opportunity to do just this, and that's Jesse Prees trying to challenge for the lead.
So Jesse Prees goes on the outside of the 43. Will try and get to that right quarter panel of the 45. They'll get out of turn 4 again. Big crash in turn 4. We will have the yellow thrown before we get to green flag pit stops. Austin Reedy is in it. Jaden Porter, Cody Ivey. It appears Timothy Cook, a host of drivers getting collected in our biggest crash of the night.
The big one in turn 4. Not exactly sure how this one started, but we're about to find out. We were a couple laps away from pit stop, so let's see exactly what happens here. You see a couple cars in the back of the field are side by side. See the 34 of Reedy's going to move down to the bottom. It looks like he gets loose, gets caught up between the apron, gets a little bit of help from the 42 of Bishop, and it looks like somebody on the outside, I believe that's the 7, gets tapped from behind, and then from there on, it's just cars trying to take avoiding action, getting into each other.
Look at many of the Drinkin' Bros Racing cars involved in that, and while we have the fog covering here at Daytona, it's a little harder to see on these wider shots, but the 34 gets loose, gets hit by his teammate, then David Brackett gets sent from behind by the 29 of Timothy Cook, and as they're all stacking up, Brandon Banks gets into Jeff No, Craig Parks, then there's Jaden Porter, Cody Kinsey, the 6 of Michael Newbraw, all of them getting involved. And it's a huge crash. We'll take a look on board with Kinsey.
And this is not going to be pretty as the cars will start stacking up. There you see people taking avoiding action, and it just blocks the racetrack very quickly, Kenneth. We talked about Bristol, how the accidents happen very quickly and happen right in front of you. In the same but different way, it's the exact same situation here. You're just going very fast around here. All of a sudden, there's a wreck, and it blocks the entire racetrack, and you're going at such a high rate of speed. And there's really not much you can do.
You look at David Brackett, the rear camera there on his Chevrolet as he got hit by Timothy Cook, sending him into the crash. Jeff No, the 14 car, is also involved. Jaden Porter, of course, in that 28, who has been hanging around the back for most of tonight's event. He also gets collected. The 6 of Michael Newbraw. It appears the 3 of Eric Schaefer also got a bit of damage. He overshoots his pit stall this time by, and the leaders are on pit road. Look at the race out. The 45 will win it barely over his teammate Ethan Fonseca Moreno. Kyle Benson to cram into the top 3, and Scott Healy being able to take away 4th. As we have caution pit stops once again, entering 40 laps to go from Daytona International Speedway. It's a foggy afternoon here at the shores of Daytona Beach, but we continue action of the 4-wide racing TJ's Team Series live on the KBueno Racing Network.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
wanted the best, you got him for abreast. Often imitated, never duplicated. The greatest show on dirt, the World of Outlaw. Dirt Racing will be available September 27th. Pre-order your copy today.
Welcome back to Daytona Beach. Restart here at lap number 60 of 100, and it's a great jump by Luke Knupp in the 45. Ethan Fonseca Moreno right behind him in second to turn one. Field had a big crash entering 3 and 4 just before we were on the verge of green flag pit stops. Kenneth Bueno, Francisco Bacchiao to bring you coverage on the KBueno Racing Network. And it's been a great race so far. We've seen pretty much everything at stake tonight. And now we're seeing Kyle Benson swing up top looking for the race lead on the 45 of Knupp.
And there you see contact between Murray and the 64, Scott Healy there for the 4th position, as now the 38 is going to move up to lead the outside lane. There you see Forster a little bit further back. Alishire had a run on the bottom. You see Curtis Kelly, Kenneth, one of the few Canadians in the field, moving his way up into the top 10.
Curtis Kelly finding his way to 8th here, and while everybody, at least for the most part in this field, are celebrating Veterans Day in the United States this Saturday, Curtis Kelly, who's not a member of the United States, he is a Canadian out of New Brunswick and Rothesay, the actual city. Curtis Kelly decided to go with the Royal Canadian Air Force scheme on his number 71 Toyota Supra tonight. So while all of the Americans around him are celebrating Veterans Day this weekend, Curtis Kelly still wanted to commemorate and honor those who serve and make the sacrifice up north in Canada. So really cool to see Curtis Kelly represent that side and that diverse nature of the 4-Wide Racing Series as one of the few Canadians in this field. And Kelly's having a fantastic night this evening. Stepped into the top 10 and really hasn't looked away from it as you wired on board with him, sitting behind the 91 of Adam Alishire.
And to give a shout out to those Canadians, shout out to Air Canada. Fantastic liveries. Just had to get that in.
So while Kelly continues to hold down a spot inside the top 10, up top you see the 00 and the 12. Jesse Priest and Lawson Peel, they made up a plethora of track position, anticipating a green flag stop. Then the caution came out, and it came at the perfect time, Francisco, for them, because now they're putting themselves in this race for the top 10 when they have been really meandering around the mid-pack all night long, as we have another switch for the lead. This time, Kyle Benson in command.
But to be honest, Kenneth, they are going to be very close on fuel. They pitted, I think, with about 33 to go in the race, 34 to go maybe. So if they're lucky enough to have enough fuel, it's going to be right to lap 100. If there's any overtime in this race, they do not have enough fuel.
and they're going to have to pit one more time. Either they're going to have to hope for a yellow to come out later in this race, or they may just have to deal with it all by themselves, which could pose the question, Francisco, when do you come down pit road? A lot of these drivers, in fact, pretty much all of them, haven't practiced green flag pit stops because they haven't experienced it through this race. How different is that dynamic going to be if we get down to green flag territory all the way through and they do have to make that extra stop?
Well, they certainly have to come down pit road, but they're probably going to try and split the run considering they don't have enough fuel. So I would guess somewhere around 15, 20 to go perhaps when you see any pit stops being made. There's going to be somebody that comes down pit road under green, and then there's going to be a group of cars that will try to stay out and wait for the caution. You're just going to have that. Because of the amount of laps that you can't make it by, you're most likely going to see cars attempt to go. I estimated that they pitted with about 44 to go, not 34 to go. So they're definitely about 10 laps short. So that was my bad on the numbers there. But certainly, without a doubt, Kenneth, though, a pit stop still left in this race. So it's going to be very exciting just to see what they're able to do. We saw it at Talladega, one of the last green flag pit stop attempts, and we saw a big crash entering pit road. We don't want to see that again.
You never know when chaos could strike, whether it be under green or really under entering pit road. We saw a lot of that at Talladega, and tonight we've seen a lot of the chaos on track bring us to yellow flag pit stops. But as we get to the final 40 laps, now 35 laps of this race from Daytona, anything and everything can change. And the lap car up ahead will leave everybody space on the top. That is the 29 of Timothy Cook, a pretty beaten car in his Chevrolet colors, so he'll let everybody by without a hitch. In the 38 will get through, remains in the race lead as Colin Forster tries to make a charge for position number 1. But there could be some growing concern, Francisco, for the drivers up front, because if we're talking long green flag run to the end of this race, possibly, and they do have to come down, you're wasting the most fuel if you're the 38 and the 99. So it's certainly an interesting topic to discuss how these two are playing their strategy, given the fact that they waste the most fuel being up here.
It is, but it's not close to the point where the leaders can't make it and the rest of the field could. They all cannot make it. So it might impact how much fuel they'll have to take under the green flag, but everybody still has to come down pit road, so it doesn't actually it doesn't hamper their race too much. They could lose maybe a handful of positions just in the exchange itself, but certainly they'll have time to be able to make up for it.
Here's Trevor Haley, driver of the number 4, the Indiana native, was found himself into the top 10 in point standings. Haley has proved to be one of the great rookie drivers in Season 6 of this 4-wide racing series, but that's to say that all the rookies have certainly impressed over the year. The CSX Ford Mustang in the red, white, and blue colors tonight at Daytona certainly wished for better after what happened at the fastest half mile last week. Francisco moved up to second, then spun around and really didn't have the best race to recall. But Haley, much like at Talladega, one of the more consistent guys and putting his name in the hat now.
And he's quietly found himself up in the 6th place in the point standings, Kenneth, and could have a shot at P4 before the night is over. So whilst his name hasn't screamed in your face in terms of the drivers to look for this season, he's been consistent enough to be up there, so certainly he's doing something right.
That's 18 points behind Brandon Banks, the next driver in line for point standings position going into tonight's race. And with the 54's setbacks being involved in that huge crash, which puts him 28th right now, this would be a monumental gain for the rookie in Trevor Haley as he tries to sort of settle himself out right behind Dane Cruz and company, the rest of the top 10. They're still trying to develop a third line. That's the 94 of TJ Bursk, who's been looking up there quite a few times, and Kyle Benson goes way out of shape. Exiting turn 2, he's going to keep it collected and will stay green.
But now they need to give him space to safely rejoin the racetrack before something happens in turn 3 like it did earlier in the event. And you see everyone was able to give him the room. Fortunately enough for Benson, he's still well in the draft, so he's not out of it, but he does lose the track position as AC's now well outside the top 15.
He's going to thank his lucky stars that he is still in this race, although he gets trapped back in the top 20 or so. He'll settle right behind Ryan Pandicio as now a third line develops. TJ Bursk in the 94 looking up there entering turn 1. We'll see how long that lasts, though. Now the 4 Trevor Haley will join the group, and we'll see what the 46 of Dane Cruz does in response. It appears that third line falls away rather quickly, and we'll get back to two-wide action at the front of the field. The Drinkin' Bros Racing duo of Jesse Priest and Lawson Peel making their statements here in the second half of this race. The Wabash, Indiana native trying to lead a couple of laps, but still Colin Forrester with the momentum coming out of turn 4.
And Jesse Priest has never won a race in the 4-wide racing series, Kenneth, so here in the late going of this one, he's trying to get his first career victory.
Former playoff driver in the series, as there's his teammate Eric Schaefer. Uncharacteristic that we'd see the 3-car getting lapped by the field, but it's been that kind of race for him here tonight. And his teammate Jesse Priest is right in the middle of the spotlight. He's got his teammate behind in Peel to give him the support. And for Priest, this would be a huge win if he could do so. And he would become the third Drinkin' Bros Racing driver to capture a win already 10 races into Season 6. It just shows you how good of a team they have been over the last couple of weeks. Now he'll take the lead officially entering 3. Forrester will remain tucked on the bottom with Scott Healy to help. They'll be side by side at a turn 4 going into 30 laps to go at the World Center of Racing. Caution flag will come out though. It's Eric Stewart with a big problem and big time damage on the front end.
Huge damage on the 82 in the same spot he had the earlier contact, but this time it certainly looks terminal. You see the smoke coming out of the back of that car, indicating just how bad it is. We're going to look at, see how this one occurred. You see Eric Schaefer up on the top. It looks like Cody Ivy with a similar issue in front, but it's a separate incident. It looks like the 82 was trying to avoid what could have happened with the 81 and gets right into the 3-car on the outside.
There's another car involved in this. It looks like a car may have gotten hit. But that was Cody Ivy in the 81, you're right, that did get unsettled first, and then he ends up right into the outside wall. And he barely collects the 24 of Stan Carnathan, so that was the car that I was talking about, the 4th member in this crash. And so the 81 with huge damage, and we talked about Eric Schaefer being put a lap down by the leaders. This is only insult to injury for Schaefer tonight.
And you see, like I said, it's very similar. What happened to the 81 is what happened to Eric Stewart earlier in the race, but Stewart just trying to avoid it. The 81 goes way up to the outside and just gets right into the side of Eric Schaefer. Nothing Schaefer could do there in that particular instance, and that's what results in the caution flag being waved. But this is an interesting caution, Kenneth, because without a doubt, if you pit now, you can make it to the end safely and maybe have enough for an overtime or two. So you see who's coming down pit road, and it's going to be most of the field. Does anyone take a chance of staying out? I wouldn't. I certainly would come down pit road now.
99 is going to bring everybody in to the feeding zoo. And the pace car you see on the top of your screen all by its lonesome. So nobody else is going to stay out. Everyone is going to come in, and the 99 will lead the troops onto pit road and see exactly what kind of strategy they're going to employ. It looks like Scott Healy is out early in the 64. He will win the race convincingly with a 6.2 second stop. That is fuel only for Healy. Jesse Priest comes away second with a 9.2 second stop. Lawson Peel, Tyler Murray, and Adam Alashire bringing in the rest of the top 10. So this is the call, Francisco, that the drivers were all looking for. An opportunistic caution, giving them the chance to come in and secure their fate on fuel.
Yeah, with this, they should be good to go for even an overtime or two for that matter. So, yeah, they'll be safe to go. They're going to now put all the cards out there and try and race more aggressively, knowing that fuel is no longer a concern.
So 73 laps into tonight's race from Daytona, and we'll get back to the green flag in just a couple of moments. Let's take a look at the full season schedule for the 4-wide racing TJ's Team Series. And what makes this run to the All-Star break interesting is that we again have a host of different tracks that lead us to there. We have Daytona tonight, our second super speedway race of the year. Michigan returns to the schedule, our second 2-mile racetrack of the season after Auto Club kicked us off at the beginning. Then the old Atlanta surface, boy, that's a fan favorite on the sim with these cars. So that'll be a lot of fun to witness in a couple of weeks. And then our first road course race, Watkins Glen, comes in a blink of an eye before we get the All-Star break at North Wilkesboro. So Francisco, the schedule only continues to diversify, and that was the point that we brought up at the beginning of the season and even multiple races in, is how these stretch of events and this stretch of tracks is really going to affect the point standings who stands on top, who's the best well-rounded driver. The rest of this run to the All-Star break is no different.
Certainly, these racetracks coming up are interesting in terms of the racing they provide, but also the storylines that it'll play into for the series. One thing we haven't talked about tonight at all is that driver challenge, and Daytona, much the racetrack it is with the super speedway action, is definitely making its inroads on that challenge in terms of any potential upsets.
Any tracks that you particularly fancy here in the rest of the schedule?
Well, if we're looking at the entire schedule, there's an obvious one, but to pick a different one, right? To pick a different one, certainly the Iowa Speedway is going to be an interesting one. It's been a while since we've seen Iowa on the schedule in this series. We also have back-to-back Indianapolis races, one on the IRP racetrack and the big oval at Indy, but also certainly one to look forward to for me personally is also going to be the Chicagoland racetrack. With these Xfinity cars, Chicagoland is a fantastic race to be able to race on. And of course, Atlanta in a couple of weeks' time with these cars. That's a beauty.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And what's also going to be interesting about the selection of races for the rest of the year, especially in December, January, February, as we close off 2023 and enter 2024, is the update that iRacing is going to employ in just a couple of weeks. They announced on the forums that for the December build, Season 1 of 2024 on iRacing, they're going to implement a new feature to the dynamic track model on oval racing. So they're still working on that full oval racing refresh, but the first phase of it is going to be released. So it's going to allow, in their words, for drivers to search for grip and have the track change a little more naturally as the race progresses with heat, track temperature, and the tires putting down rubber. So that'll be a lot of fun if that seems to be just as good as they say it is, and if it comes out the way it is. Atlanta, Kansas, maybe Texas might be races to watch out for later in the year. Scott Healy and Jesse Prees will bring us along to the green flag restart. 25 laps to go from Daytona.
And a good launch for Prees, and it'll get Lawson Peel clear for the second spot as well. Forster is going to have to see what he does. If he stays on the outside, goes to the bottom, he'll go to the bottom. Actually, that's not Forster. But you see Alishire now on the inside of Jesse Prees to try and make a move. Tyler Murray settles into the 5th spot, and you see mostly single file at the front of the field.
And they're all sporadic throughout the top 10 or so. The 36 and the 38 are trying to get together, all trying to trail the 64 of Scott Healy. As we get to 25 laps to go, why don't we crank it up? And we'll get you some of the sounds here from Daytona on the KBueno Racing Network. We are 3 wide for the race lead. Tyler Murray in the 36 shot out of a cannon with help from his teammate in Benson. Jesse Preece in the middle. Scott Healy on the bottom. Back for turn 1.
The intensity has certainly picked up here, Kenneth, as we're approaching 20 laps to go in this race, and everyone's trying to find a way to get to the front of the field to try and win this race. As you see Jesse Preece trying his best to do what he can in the middle lane, with Scott Healy on the bottom and Tyler Murray up on the top.
And more names are coming into the picture. The 13 of Craig Launslager. He's the 3rd car on the very top line. He came home with a top 5 finish after starting 22nd last week at Bristol Motor Speedway, and after hanging around the rear of the field for most of tonight's action, and after starting 21st, the 13 is up here in his Procore Ford Mustang with a chance to work with his teammates and get them to the front. For now, the 64 will hold the fort down, and now we're at 20 laps to go, still gridlocked, all 3 lanes occupied.
And Trevor Haley, the rookie driver, is there second in the middle row as well, so shout out to the rookie for trying to make something happen here.
Certainly turned up the aggression later in this race, and it has worked. Haley, who spent the bulk of this race just being as conservative as can be, he's starting to slowly work his way forward, and he might have a shot at leading some laps here at the World Center of Racing. For now, it's Jesse Preece and Scott Healy continuing to command this absolute melee of cars. And as Murray continues to man that 3rd lane, now Haley takes advantage. He wants to join the prancing horses up top.
And he's going to try and make it 3x3x3 up at the very front. He'll do so because Preece is to the outside. Scott Healy, and he's to the outside of Preece himself as Murray gets into the outside wall just in front of Benson. That's going to hurt the outside lane's momentum as Launslager also taps the wall.
Going to slow them down quite a bit, but they might have the chance to redeem themselves. It looks like they will tuck in for the middle lane, so Haley left all by himself, and the 13 of Launslager, the only other car left, Francisco. And this is a great look entering turns 3 and 4. You can see the wide shot, just how large this field has become, clustered together. Jesse Preece is going to try and ditch the 64, but with no help, and he'll get left behind.
For now, because Haley's too far back to give him any sort of help right then and there, so he's going to lose a little bit of ground for now. But Healy now on the bottom. But how about Lawson Peel, Kenneth? He's ran at the back most of the race, and here he is with 19 laps to go in this race. He's now leading.
One of the last times we checked on him, Francisco, he was 23rd in this race, and now hanging up top, blocking in front of the 64 and taking control of the race. Adam Alashire with a push from the 46 will get back to the inside before turn 3, but the National Guard Chevrolet back out in front. Now here comes Alashire with a move down low. Colin Forrester to the 3rd lane.
And Dane Cruz is trying to help Alashire get to the front of the field. It's one of those BBR cars, and you see another one back there. That's Ethan Fonseca right behind Luke Canup. So those guys had a little bit of a stumble there in the last couple laps, but they found themselves back up in front. And look at Forrester on the outside.
Forrester with a big run, and he's got the push from the 94 of TJ Burke. So there's only 2 cars up there, but despite the lack in patronage, despite the lack in numbers, they are still making this work on the 3rd lane, and they remain 3 wide. Contentious for the race lead in Francisco. In the middle of this group, you've got top 5 and top 10 places up for grasp. If you're any one of these guys, do you sort of change your approach, or are you stuck where you're at and just going to hope that maybe the seas will part at some point?
You could change your approach, but it depends on if you think there's going to be a crash or not, and that's purely going to be what plays a role in that. If you think they're going to crash before the end of this race, then you drop out and let them do so. And at some point, you start wondering if it's going to happen once you get down inside 5 to go. But if you're truly confident in that it's going to happen, it could get you a good result. But also, if you want to try and win the race, you try and be up here as best as you can. You don't know if it's going to happen or not. But also, just get ahead of the wreck. That way you can still battle it out.
You never know what position the wreck might come from, as Lawson Peel has to fend through the middle. Scott Healy swings up high to block the 99's momentum, so it'll make it 3 wide again for the top spot here at Daytona. The 91 will hold on strong, and the Supras again band together against that double yellow line at the bottom of the track. Car sideways. That's Tyler Murray. He brings the 43 of Moreno with him and the 63 of Ryan Pandicio. All 3 of them will save it.
Wow, an incredible triple save by all of them. to be able to keep it going. They're going to lose a lot of touch there with the lead draft. They're going to have to work the rest of the race to try and get back up there. But they're lucky to still keep it going. And look at that contact with the 36 and the 63. I'm not sure exactly what happened to the 43, Kenneth, to have him get involved. He maybe got tapped from behind, saw that going on, and maybe sent sideways. But certainly those guys, fortunate enough to keep their race cars, but they're now lost with the lead draft. But they can certainly still get back up there in the next 15 laps.
It was the 36 that got up high. Now the 48 gets turned
Crash.
right in front of the 64. A multi-car crash. Trouble in turn 4. Caution is out.
A blessing in disguise for those very guys we were just talking about, Kenneth, because of that incident that happened a lap ago, they were able to miss it. Now they're still going.
And there's Colin Forrester, all torn up. The Florida native will not have a chance at 3 in a row here at Daytona. As we'll try and see exactly what happened with the wreck, but it was initial contact between the 64 of Scott Healy and the 48 of AJ Green.
And it happened rather quickly, Kenneth, too. It looked like the 64 and the 99 potentially made some contact here. And no, it looks like AJ Green instead just kind of wobbles up a little bit, just gets into the path of the 64 of Healy, and immediately just sends him around, and several cars have nowhere to go as the line immediately gets stacked up. We'll get an onboard look with AJ Green. You see as he starts to score in front of that outside lane right here, just kind of goes up a little bit, and boom, gets into the 64, and around he goes aggressively into the outside wall, and other cars just pile all in. And there you see Ethan Fonseca, Ryan Pandicio, Tyler Murray, among others, that were right in the thick of it. They would have been in that crash if they had been exactly where they had been a lap ago, Kenneth, but because of what had happened, they were able to miss it.
Got a look here from the 64 of Scott Healy, who was running up front. And so he's watching this middle lane get the momentum, and right there is where the contact is made. 64 gets sent right in the thick of things. The 89 makes the contact. Brian Terry with damage. There's the 99 of Forster getting his front bumper clip torn off. Looks like TJ Burskin, the 94, also with a bit of damage too. And I believe the 48 here, Francisco, sort of reacted to the 46 of Cruz, sliding up just a tad bit. And as he made that little swing up by a couple of inches, margins are so very thin here at Daytona. You'll see that 46 car. He'll swerve up just the slightest bit. The 48 thinks he's out of space. He moves up, but right into the path of the 64.
I think that just comes down to the narrowness of this racetrack, Kenneth. When you're running 3 wide like that, just any bit of movement can cause any bit of trouble. And you're right, it very much was the case where the 46 moved up a little bit, AJ Green moved up a little bit, but there's just no room to give each other the room. You have to be tight on each other when you're 3 wide like that.
So caution is out with 14 laps to go, and that will hand Adam Alashire the lead and give the field a break from 3 wide action at the very front of the field. So as the 91 continues to lead the race here from Daytona, we will remind you that coverage of the 4 Wide Racing TJ's Team Series is brought to you by iRacing. Get your sim racing career started today at iRacing.com. And by TJ's Team. To learn more about the Foundation's mission to end pediatric cancer, you can go to wearmorethanacake.org. And by Paul's Setup Shop. So this race certainly has turned on its head, Francisco. Boy, we were expecting a strategy race to come in to play. We saw probably a scenario where drivers were coming in all at one single file, and then we get the cautions rolling in like waves, just like they do here at Daytona Beach. So it's definitely been an interesting one tonight, and as we roll through the final laps of this race, now everything's up for grabs. These drivers are going to take no prisoners.
Yeah, take no prisoners, like the Megadeth song, indeed. And with what's going to be 12 laps to go once they take the green flag, Kenneth, I don't expect the aggression to go down. I expect it to continue to multiply exponentially.
Now, Adam Alashire, who leads this race back to green, he will have Dane Cruz on his outside. The last time we saw Adam Alashire get into victory lane in this 4 Wide Racing Series was back at race 17 of season 4 at Watkins Glen. Remember that race when The server disconnected midway. We had a lot of technical difficulties. It jumbled up the field. Alashire had a placement inside the top 3, and then he just dominated the second half and was able to walk away with the W. Probably feels like ages ago if you're Alashire, but in the brand new era of Xfinity Series cars in Season 6, the 91 has a chance to sort of reverse what's been an up and down year for the Skybox Racing Supra and give Alashire his first win since, and boost him in the point standings. Now for Dane Cruz on the other hand of it, he's looking for his first win in just his second start, Francisco, and eyeing in for BBR's 51st victory after their 50th last week.
Absolutely, Kenneth. And Dane Cruz, of course, is not a full-time racer in the series, so he's just out here to win races. He has no worries about points and playoffs. That's not a concern of his. He just wants to go out in every single race and try and win it. So that's a different mentality, a different approach he can have, knowing that he has no pressure as far as points is concerned. He just has to go out there and try and be the first of these racers to finish this race. And it's easier said than done, but it's a stress-free environment that it creates.
He's also got a little more comfort because his teammate, Luke Knupp, sitting back in 4th on the inside of row number 2. So at least he's got some teammates around him to work with as the 2 Supras will come out of turn 4 to the tri-oval. Pace car is down. We'll catch the green flag with 12 laps to go from Daytona. Alashire up and early, but the 46 with a monumental shove by the 38 to give him the race lead into turn 1.
He's going to get a big push here from Kyle Benson, but Alashire ends up getting a slight push from Knupp to kind of level out that run. You see the outside's a little bit more formed than the inside. Not that many cars on the bottom, or at least they're strung out. So look for Dane Cruz to get clear on the outside.
He'll have the big run, and look at the amount of drivers gathered together on that second lane. They've got it going on the super stretch. It'll give Dane Cruz the lead. He'll shuffle down. He won't bring Benson with him. He'll stand in front of the 91. He'll hold control, and now Benson has clean air and a push by the 71 of Curtis Kelly.
We'll see if Cruz tries to block both lines. He stays to the bottom for now because it doesn't have the momentum on the outside. But Cruz now leading at Daytona with 11 laps to go. Trevor Haley, Tony Kivet have found themselves up into the top 10. Luke Knupp is now separated from his teammate. See what Luke tries to do to get up there with his teammate.
And Kyle Benson, who leads that outside lane, has seen a string of pretty poor races. At Bristol last week, got involved in a crash, finished below the top 20. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen Benson be in contention for most of the outing until he either gets taken out by a crash or is just ending up in the wrong place at the wrong time. Phoenix comes to mind immediately. They've been looking up, battling for track position as the hit and road cycle went through, and the 38 just got loose and right into the outside wall. The 38 looking to gather his first victory in a little while since last season's playoffs. As they get a little loose coming out of the tri-oval, we are door to door for the lead. 10 laps to go.
25 miles left in this race. Still enough time for a lot of things to happen. Trevor Haley now finds himself third on the outside row. You see Ethan Fonseca's kind of worked his way back up into this main group. Jesse Prees with Lawson Peel have found their way back up there. How about Kevin D'Elia, Kenneth? He finds himself in that inside lane alongside Brandon Gillis. Those guys are up in the top 10 right now.
And Brady Cox in the 78 too. That black and neon green Limeade Media Chevrolet Camaro. Boy, they have done a lot of great work over this race to put themselves in this position late. And also for D'Elia, his teammate for Skybox, Adam Alashire, and his other teammate for Skybox, Curtis Kelly, are right in front of him by a couple of positions. So teammates again finding themselves on the racetrack now. 9 laps to go. Benson has control. Dane Cruz on the inside, and no sight of a third line just yet.
Not yet, but it'll happen soon enough as the start winding down and guys get impatient. Someone's going to jump up there, and eventually they're going to make some sort of ground. And once the track is blocked, Kenneth, that's where the trouble will happen.
They stay double file, multiple rows deep. No clear and convincing leader at the moment. The 46 is going to remain up front. And we're right on board with Brandon Gillis here in the 9, one of those drivers who has come up here through the field lanes and get around Colin Forrester. What has been an absolutely chaotic race from Daytona might just get even more chaotic. We might crank it up to 11, but the lead will change hands again to Benson back to turn 1. It'll be 8 laps to go.
it keeps swapping between which end of the racetrack you're looking at between those two. So it's going to come down to when do they get the right push at the right time. You see right there off of turn 2, that's when the 46 gets out in front of the 38. But this is where Benson powers down the straightaway. He's able to get that push from Curtis Kelly. But right there, it looks like Alisher actually gives Dane Cruz a really good push. Cruz might get clear here in 3 and 4, but I don't expect him to move up the block as he kills sideways, and he's able to save it.
He's able to keep it controlled, but he will stack up almost everybody at the second half of this inside line. There's Ryan Pandicio falling back. Everybody else had to slow down, and while it does keep them all intact to prevent a yellow flag, it will basically stray them away from everybody else up front. Now the third line develops. The two Drinking Bros Racing Chevrolets are back at it again. Prees and Peel.
Prees with a huge run. Peel's able to follow him through. It gives him enough momentum to stay up there. So we'll just have to see what happens here down the back straightaway. You see, that's the 78 that joins them up there. So a fair amount of car in each line so far, Kenneth, as we approach 6 laps to go.
It'll get more contentious from here on out. More than a couple times, we have seen the lead be decided by 3 cars on the inside, middle, and very top. Now we've got a battle for the lead again between 3 cars. Jesse Prees goes up to the front. He goes to the quarter panel of the 38. This time by, it'll be 6 laps to go from the World Center of Racing. Prees trying to charge for the lead.
A couple of guys trying to get their first wins or their first wins in a long time. So Daytona bring out the best in everybody right now. Benson trying to lead the middle line, but it's Dane Cruz on the bottom so far with the lead. Jesse Prees on the outside trying to capture the exact same first win. Who's going to prevail here as we approach 5 to go?
And who's going to join that third line? Because there are only 2 cars up there from the Drinking Bros Racing camp. If you're anyone in that second line, are you more inclined to go up there and get the big run to give yourself a shot at this race win? Coming up 5 laps to go.
You have to try it at some point, because if you stay where you are, you're only going to stay where you are. And if you have nothing to lose a little bit further back there, it looks like somebody may have moved up. I believe it was Tyler Murray that jumped up there to try and make that third line work.
And a ride on board with Kevin D'Elia, the Skybox Supra, who has been hanging around quietly through this race and started 25th, but now up 16 spots to a potential top 10 outing or even a race win. Now more cars join that third lane. Bring in Tyler Murray as the third one. Brady Cox and Patrick Thompson out of nowhere. 5 cars on that third lane.
But Dane Cruz stays being the one cleared on the bottom as Prees gets stacked up a little bit on the outside.
Crash! Trouble! Lance Hill in the outside wall. Caution is out with 4 laps to go. And Lance Hill
into overtime.
Slows down at the trialable grass with minimal damage to his Worldwide Express Toyota Supra. And that will bring out the caution once more, as it was contact at the tail end of this first pack.
So you see what happens here. It looks like he was trying to jump up to the outside to follow the momentum from the outside, but at the same time they had just stacked up. So it was kind of closing the gap there, and you see him make contact with that car on his outside. I wasn't quite sure who it was. You see right there, it just goes around. Fortunately, nobody hit him, so he should be okay enough to be able to keep going and at least stay in this race. But certainly not what most of the field wanted to see, because now you get a chance to think about this. You have to think about overtime, and that's just going to add a lot more to it than what it needs to be.
There's Jeff No.
Wow.
Right through the middle of that. That was Patrick Thompson darting to the bottom of the racetrack, the other car involved in it. And he was, as aforementioned, the 5th car on the top side, going 3 wide with the rest of the field. And as they slow down, the pace car will pick the 46 of Dane Cruz up. And a great point you make there about having to deal mentally with overtime. You had it in your mind with the adrenaline at an all-time high that was going to decide the race. That run to the finish going 3 wide, but now you get to reset and have a chance at changing your fate in the last couple of laps. How mentally draining is that for a driver when you enter overtime and you have to think about 1,000 different things over the course of 2 laps?
It's the worst for the leader, because he has to think about every scenario that's going on behind him of guys trying to mount challenges to take the spot away. As you go further and further back, it's a lot easier because it's a lot more clear what you have to do, and that's just do whatever you have to get up there. But if you're Dane Cruz in this position, just about anything could happen behind you, and it could cause you to lose this race. So you're just constantly thinking about what happens if certain driver makes a move, if they go against you and they all jump up to your outside or jump to your inside, whatever the case may be. That's exactly what's going through his mind. I know he sees that 45 of Luke Knupp back there and hopes that he was right behind him, but with that 45 being in the 5th position, he'll try to do the best he can because that's the closest help that 45 has, or the 46 has.
And you look further behind this 46, excluding his teammate in Luke Knupp. You've got Kyle Benson, Adam Alashire, Curtis Kelly, and then further back in 6, Jesse Prees, then Trevor Haley, Kevin D'Elia, Lawson Peel, and Ethan Fonseca Moreno. The common thread between all of those drivers sitting behind Dane Cruz, they are all full-time competitors. Dane Cruz is only planned to run part-time in this series for 2023 and 2024. His first start came at Pocono. It was an immediate success, top 3 finish, but he told us in the booth after the race while we interviewed him that he doesn't really plan to run every single race. He just plans to run whatever he can, whenever he wants to as well. Tonight seemed to be his return of the series. And that's going to play a pivotal role as well, Francisco, because as we dive further in the regular season, drivers might remember this Daytona race for points-paying positions as a win that probably got away for Benson, Alashire, Kelly, you name it. Guys who are trying to push forward in the point standings and secure a playoff spot as early as possible. Dane Cruz throws a wrench in all of that as the driver not running every single race.
And not just in the Drivers' Championship, Kenneth, but also the Team Championship as well. Since he is racing under the KBueno Racing banner, it's going to help that team in the Team Championship in their battle against Drinkin' Bros Racing. And with every point that they can get with a better finish, it takes a point away from Drinkin' Bros Racing and adds it towards them. So absolutely, this could play a huge role if the driver of the 46 is able to pull this off.
And it will be the first time that KBueno Racing goes 2 in a row this season. Cruz, if he gets this win, will be the 3rd BBR driver to win this season. And he'll be the first Toyota since Luke Knupp back at Nashville Superspeedway race number 2. It has been quite a long while since we've seen a Toyota occupy victory lane. We've seen a lot of Chevys in the mix. We haven't seen any Fords yet either. But Dane Cruz looking for his first career 4-wide win. Will lead the field to green. Kyle Benson on his outside in row 1. Curtis Kelly and Adam Alashire, the 2 Skybox teammates, in 3rd and 4th. Luke Knupp bringing up the top 5. Then Jesse Prees, Trevor Haley, Kevin D'Elia, Ethan Fonseca Moreno, and Lawson Peel to reel in the rest of the top 10. We'll have a green-white checkered restart. So we'll go green with 2 laps to go. If we get a caution before the leader gets to the white flag, then we will stack it up and do it all over again. If the leader does get to the white and no caution is called, we are running it to the checkered flag no matter what. And here at Daytona, much like Talladega earlier this season, you don't know what to expect. Our last super speedway race was decided by mere thousandths of a second. Could tonight be the same? Pace car will bring him out of turn 4 for 2 laps to go. Dane Cruz, Kyle Benson will try and bring the field to full song at the exit of turns 1 and 2. Pace car will make that left to the entrance of pit road, and all eyes on the Yahoo Supra of Dane Cruz to bring us back to green. He gets on the gas pedal, first attempt at overtime.
And that was not a good restart for Kyle Benson. Kenneth, look how far back he's falling relative to Dane Cruz. Alashire will clear, so Alashire will decide if he goes to the outside or if he tries something. You see, he's already looking to the outside. He's going to get to the outside of Dane Cruz, but look, it puts Luke Knupp behind him.
And Trevor Haley is trying to force his nose in the tight space between Alashire and Benson. It does not work, and the KBueno Racing teammates find each other nose to tail on the back straightaway.
And you see they're trying to push aggressively. Now you don't look at temperatures, Kenneth. You're trying to push as much as you can until the checkered flag. Benson now behind the 91 of Alashire. Can they make something happen on this outside lane as they come out of turn 4 for the white flag? No incidents have happened so far, and Luke Knupp is going to jump to the outside.
Luke Knupp is pulling no punches, but he gets sent 3 wide.
3 wide.
Alashire moves to the middle, and that's his teammate, Curtis Kelly, in the Royal Canadian Air Force Supra, to make a challenge right behind him. We're 3 wide for the lead entering turn 1.
And that's Trevor Haley on the bottom that's pushing Dane Cruz. Both of those guys are trying to go for their first win, and Lawson Peel's on the bottom.
Lawson Peel, the third car in it. Make that about the only Chevrolet in the
Crash.
top 5. Crash behind. Pandicio, Porter, and others involved as they try to scramble into turn 3. The first pack still gets intact. Haley hip checks the 71. And as Luke Knupp gets shuffled out of line, it's a battle between two. Aleshire, Cruz out of turn 4. Jesse Prees tries to make a statement up high. It'll be door to door to the stripe. Aleshire and Cruz. And it is Adam Aleshire by 15th 1,000ths of a second.
Incredible.
Adam Aleshire gets his first win since Watkins Glen in Season 4. And after a season that has turned him upside down, turned him left, right, you name it, all sort of directions that Aleshire has gone in this season. Now a win to his credit for his relentlessness and his ability to survive in that last lap. An unbelievable finish from Daytona.
And Skybox first win as a team, Kenneth.
After Aleshire left Stonks Motorsports a couple of seasons ago to join Trackhouse Racing with Lance Hill, then making this new endeavor with Skybox Racing, Adam Aleshire brings the team's first win. And it comes at the Super Speedway at Daytona Victory Lane for the 91 of Adam Aleshire, who will celebrate and will enter Paul's Setup Shop Victory Lane for the very first time this year.
And you can't help but feel for Dane Cruz, Kenneth. We talked about it under that caution flag, just how much you have to think about what's going on. And Luke Knupp made that move to try and go for the win himself, coming to the white flag. You have to think how much that hurt both of their chances at winning the race there. I'm sure they're both thinking about that one back again.
For Dane Cruz, that is an absolute heartbreaker after leading through the last restart. For Skybox, this is absolute celebration. Aleshire with the win, his teammate Curtis Kelly, the Canadian, in third. And the 91 will continue his celebrations here from Daytona International Speedway. Let's get a look at your full unofficial results here from Florida. And it is Adam Aleshire with his first win in a while. Gets to the race W at the end by 15 1,000ths of a second over Dane Cruz. Curtis Kelly completes a Toyota top 3. Trevor Haley, the rookie driver, comes home in 4th. That'll certainly boost him heading over to Michigan next week. Tyler Murray, who was strong all race long, closes it out with a top 5. Those are the first 2 Fords inside the top 5, by the way. First Chevrolet is Lawson Peel in P6. Jesse Prees is back in 7th. Brady Cox behind him in 8th place. Kevin D'Elia in 9th. And Ethan Fonseca Moreno. Topsy-turvy race for him, but he closes it out with a top 10.
Kyle Benson just misses out on the top 10 in the 11th spot with teammate Austin Reedy in the 12th spot. Luke Knupp fell back to the 13th position on that final lap with Christopher Bishop in the 14th spot. Brandon Banks will finish in the 15th position. Tony Kibbett will be in 16th. Cody Kinsey with the 17th position. Patrick Thompson finishes in 18th. CJ Munier will be in the 19th spot with Brandon Gillis rounding out your top 20.
And behind them, 21st is Jeff No, the rookie. Michael Newbraw is in 22nd. Jaden Porter, 23rd. Ryan Pandicio got caught up in a crash near the white flag. So did Porter. He is 24th. 25th goes to Eric Schaefer. Worst finish of the year for car number 3. He's 1 lap down. 26th will go to Lance Hill, who could not recover after the struggles at Bristol 1 week prior. Colin Forrester, who had won the last 2 races in a row here at the World Center of Racing, cannot make it a 3rd. He is 27th. 28th goes to Craig Lautenslager. 29th to Timothy Cook. And Brian Terry brings in the rest of the top 30.
31st goes to the 17 of Craig Parks, with TJ Burst being in the 32nd position. Scott Healy will finish 33rd. AJ Green, former winner here as well, will finish 34th. Eric Stewart will finish 35th, with Cody Ivey finishing in the 36th position. Stan Carnathan will finish in the 37th spot, with David Brackett in the 38th spot. Mikey Neal finished 39th, and Rodney Roberts rounds out your field in the 40th position.
That's your entire field here from the World Center of Racing. In just a couple of moments, we will have post-race coverage from Daytona. We'll take a short break, but don't go anywhere on the KBueno Racing Network. Back live from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. 100 laps done and dusted here in the 4-Wide Racing TJ's Team Series. And the victor out of the scramble on the last lap is Adam Aleshire for the first time since Season 4. He gets his first victory this season, and first victory, Adam, for Team Skybox. I'm sure that means a lot, and we'll touch on that in just a little bit. But just talk us through how you were able to survive what was just an all-out brawl in those last 2 laps.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. Coming into the white, I saw Luke up in front of me, and he was doing a great job all race, putting people 3 wide, just moving up in the field. But I saw him come up, and there was a little bit of room between me and the 4, so I turned down, and I managed to get below him. And lucky Benson went with him, because Curtis was able to follow me, get on my bumper and push me to the win there, so I have a lot to thank him for. He got me that win pretty much. But having an EOL at the beginning of the race definitely made that harder, but I don't know how. It was fun. 46 raced me clean, and that was good.
And you talked about Curtis Kelly being such an instrumental part of this finish. I mean, you, Kelly, and at one point, Kevin D'Elia, you guys at Team Skybox certainly had something dialed up here at the Super Speedway, and to get their first win in team history entering the 4-Wide Racing Series this year, what does that mean to you?
It means a lot. Me, Curtis, Kevin, all the other guys from up front that we work with, we manage to find each other all the time. It always works well until we get wrecked, and then if we find each other at the end, it turns out great, and it means a lot. At the end of the race, it's like, finally we got a win. I'm like, yeah, we did.
And for those teammates, did you feel any pressure trying to find them? Because, I mean, we were 3 wide for the lead multiple times throughout this race. It did feel like in the second half of this event, everybody at the front was all clustered with really no real space around them. A lot of margin for error being very small. So did you feel that pressure quite a bit in the middle of the pack?
We tried to find each other, but once we all got three wide, it was just push the guy in front of you and hope you don't wreck. Hopefully move your line forward, but as soon as you get three wide, you can't really get to where you want to be with your teammates.
So a big win for you here from Daytona, and before tonight's race at Daytona, coming off of Bristol, you came in 26 for the point standings. How much of a turnaround is this to get this win and now to look forward? And what is that a turnaround? What kind of turnaround is that mentally for you after a season of many ups, many downs, but finally getting to the summit?
It feels pretty good after not winning at all last season. Yeah, hopefully I'll make it next race and continue the momentum. I moved to college actually this next week, so hopefully I'll make it. I should, but it feels good.
Well, first and foremost, we'll wish you well on that move. But a big congratulations here from Daytona before we send you off for tonight's celebrations. Anybody in particular you want to thank for the run?
Definitely Curtis. Teammates, they pushed me, helped me, kept me calm. I got a little frustrated with myself in the middle of the race. I think a couple of my friends watching the race, thank them. And as always, thank you guys up in the booth. You do a great job.
All right, Adam, we certainly appreciate the time. We appreciate the kind words. And on behalf of all of us here at the KBueno Racing Network, congratulations on your first win in a while. Since Season 4, it must have felt long overdue. Go celebrate that. We'll see you hopefully at Michigan next week. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
So that's Adam Alashire in the 91, bringing Skybox Racing their first win in Season 6 of the series. We'll toss it over to P2. Francisco, you're caught up with rookie Dane Cruz.
Dane, this is Francisco up in the booth, and you were leading there, coming to the white flag, and just by a hair, you lost out to the 91 of Adam Alashire. What more did you need on the restart to try and win this race?
I just, my pushers kind of left me, but I can't blame it all on them. They're trying to win the race too, and I should have been more aggressive with the blocking. I just figured everything I learned tonight, that the inside line was just super good, and I tried to keep it on the green-white checkered. I didn't think I'd get past, and it was close. I'm disappointed, man. Like I've been in this situation so many times where I'm leading on a green-white checkered at these super speedways, and I just haven't been able to get one of these wins, and I'm really disappointed. But it's Daytona. I mean, I can't complain about a P2 in a completely clean car, but it could have been more. But I had a good time.
Certainly a hard one to digest, but still, it was a great outing from you, and just your second start in the series, and you're able to come away with another top 3 finish. So that means you still hold the average finish record despite the low amount of starts. You think you could keep this up in the next coming races?
Yeah, like I said, I'm running part-time, so I don't know when my next race is gonna be. I might run Michigan. I like that track, but if you look at the finishes, it's kind of looking like a countdown with third at Pocono, second here, and maybe in the next start I can get a win. But I don't know. It could have been tonight, but we'll just have to wait.
Well, still, it was a really good effort from you. You worked really well with your teammates, and you were at the front when it mattered most. We'll give you the opportunity to give a shout out to everyone who helped make this effort by you possible.
I just got to shout out BBR, Ethan and Luke. They did good tonight. I'm just, you could call it bad teamwork at the end, but we all want to win. So if Luke's watching, it's not that big of a deal, bro. We'll be fine.
Appreciate the time you take with us, Dane, and we hope to see you out there on the racetrack soon. And once again, a nice, solid effort here tonight.
All right, thank you.
That is Dane Cruz in the 46, who, you're right, Francisco, does continue that very high average finish in his part-time schedule. We'll turn it over to the third-place finisher, Curtis Kelly, and, the saying, it's all in a day's work. Well, for me, looking at the end of this race, it felt like it was all in a team's work. You and Adam, Curtis, certainly on dial-up near the end of that race, working together nose to tail. And while Adam said that you were such a huge part of this race win tonight. What did it look like from your end behind the wheel?
Well, really, like he's saying, it's a team game at Daytona. You can be as fast as you want to be on your own, but you need somebody there to push you at the end. And unfortunately, Dane kind of had people leave him there, and we were able to find ourselves in the middle, as Adam was talking about. Really, coming into the final laps, I told him I'm going to stick with Benson and him, and if Benson pops out, I'm 100% staying middle with him. Like, I know my position at that point. I'm not able to win the race most likely from there, and I want everything I can for Adam to get him to the front. And luckily, working with Benson, the previous run kind of feels like it led to that victory there a bit, because working on the outside with him, I was able to learn what it was feeling like a lot, learn the run a bit and how to build it better. And that led to us building the run past Dan in the final lap when we hooked up, and it was good.
And of course, you did have some super speedway experience with this field a couple of weeks ago at Talladega. Did that in any shape or form help you maybe understand a bit better about this race, or maybe attack this race a little bit of a different way, and sort of putting you in that position to get up front near the end?
Daytona or Talladega wasn't the best race overall. I kind of got knocked out early there, but I knew what it was going to be like here with the field for the most part. It was a lot tighter than I thought it was going to be up front. It was a lot of nice 3-wide running for quite a while there. A lot of competition, some new names that we haven't seen in previous seasons. So it's nice having fresh blood in a drafting pack. You get to work with new people, and makes for a lot different racing than past years.
So now we move on to another 2-mile track, but it's in Brooklyn, Michigan. So Michigan International Speedway next up. Your expectations on that one?
Tight. One word answer there.
That right front's going to be screaming. Michigan is certainly a tough one to drive on that tire. But Curtis Kelly, a fantastic result here from Daytona International Speedway, bringing your teammate to the first win for Skybox Racing. Before we let you go, anybody in particular you want to thank for tonight's finish?
No, just a huge shout out to Adam. He deserves that win. He earned it himself there coming to the white flag. And shout out to Kevin and Ryan. They had a hard time. Ryan got caught out on the white flag, and Kevin got caught up coming to the line. But it was a good finish overall for the team, I think. And nice to put our name out there.
Well, Curtis, we certainly appreciate the time as always. A big congratulations on the top 3 finish from the World Center of Racing, and looking forward to seeing you take the green at Michigan next week.
Appreciate it.
So Curtis Kelly in the 71 rounds out the top 3 here tonight from Daytona International Speedway. It's his teammate Adam Alashire to capture his first win since season 4. First one for Skybox, and he becomes the 6th different winner this season, Francisco, so only adding to the list of drivers to visit Victory Lane this year. It's hard to really find a word to describe this race from Daytona, but it is typical near the end, poetic in a way, to find a finish this close at these super speedways and to emerge with a new winner on top.
Absolutely, and it's been a while for Adam Alashire. Of course, you mentioned the first win since Watkins Glen, so yeah, happy for him to get back to victory lane, back to winning ways after not finding it in season 5. But you look at the guys' opportunities to win today. You had Dane Cruz almost come up with the win. Jesse Prees was in the mix. Curtis Kelly was involved in it as well. You had a lot of guys up there that really needed some good runs, and they were able to get them. And now as we move towards Michigan before the Thanksgiving break, Kenneth, we have one more opportunity in the first half of this season for drivers to really try and see if they can do something to help their point situation, because now that the points have been updated here, according to Tyler Murray, of course, Lawson Peel will stay at the top of the standings. He now extends his gap over Eric Schaefer as Ethan Fonseca closes the gap to P2 and Eric Schaefer. Luke Canup far away behind Ethan Fonseca as the top 3 have really pulled away from the rest of the field. Brandon Banks, Trevor Haley, all those guys are really close together for that 4th spot, with Kyle Benson still staying now moves above the cut line after his race here tonight, Kenneth. And Jaden Porter now becomes the first driver out, just 2 points behind Ryan Pendicio.
But now we have to consider the newest winner, Adam Alashire. We get to see the new wildcard system in full effect. As per wildcard rules, you can be outside the top 14, But if you have a win and have at least 60% completion rate in all races of the season, you are eligible to make it through the postseason. So while Alashire technically in points moves up to only 23rd after 26th last week at Bristol in standings, he now holds a wild card spot. So if he continues to run here in the 4-Wide Racing Series this year, if he completes the 60% completion rate required in attendance, Alashire will be seen in the postseason. So he gets to hold on to one wild card spot. Now that means there's another on tap, especially with TJ Burskin there too. He's been floating around the top 15 as we've seen late. So Adam Alashire wins tonight from Daytona, and next up we head to Brooklyn, Michigan. Francisco, our second 2-mile D-shaped oval on the schedule, our first since the opener at Auto Club. What do we expect there in the Irish Hills?
Well, a lot of what we saw at Auto Club, except not as wide of a racetrack. Michigan, a lot more banked and a lot faster, but it's not as wide as Auto Club is. But certainly a lot of high-speed racing. A lot of draft is going to be prevalent there. It's going to come down to tire saving. Big time there is going to be the key is going to be tire saving to try and save on those long runs. And that's really it, Kenneth. It's not an easy track to make passes, so you need track position and tire saving to really be able to keep it and be able to make it work. And that's going to be it for the next 2 weeks after that.
And then we head to the All-Star break. North Wilkesboro Speedway will bring us to a little bit of a break. Then we head further into November. We'll celebrate Thanksgiving week, and we'll take that time off, and we'll go right into the winter schedule, moving us into 2024. Our season is going rather fast, already 10 races down, as we continue to decide who will become a 4-Wide Racing champion in Season 6. But after a stunner here in Daytona, that'll do it for our coverage here on the KBueno Racing Network tonight. So for Tyler Murray and everyone from the admin team and race council at 4Wide, and from all of us at the KBueno Racing Network, for Keelan Belsha, for Charlie Byer, and for my colleague in the booth tonight, Francisco Bacallao, my name is Kenneth Bueno, saying so long from Daytona Beach. Congratulations to Adam Alashire on the win. We'll see you at Brooklyn, Michigan, 1 week from tonight, Michigan International Speedway.